Chapter 531, Epilogue 2 Not Found Anywhere 6. Once more, 1 hour before the apocalypse. Damn it, where the hell am I? Han Soo-young held her spinning head and hurriedly scanned her surroundings. The last thing she saw was the figure of Yoo Young-hyuk disappearing within the shower of light. She quickly took a look at her own body. It was a success. Her much thinner arms and muscles that lost their suppleness. She couldn't sense any of the fables she had compiled, the skills she trained in, nor even her stigma. However, that wasn't a problem. They had already thought up of what to do with such issues when the scenario got underway again. No, the real issue was, crap, I don't have much time left. Her smartphone's battery was almost out of juice, and she couldn't confirm the well-beings of her companions at the moment. It was a fortune among misfortunes that she somehow managed to download the locations of her companions from the chat room just now. These guys, they did pretty well without me. Just a casual browse-through was enough for her to get a bead on where they were currently with their operation. That wasn't too surprising, though, considering that she was the one in charge of the operation in the first place. But then, Han Soo-young's eyes, scanning the map of the deployed locations, began trembling. This idiot. She raised her head and looked around her. Although it could be tight, there seemed to be enough time left still. 30 minutes before the apocalypse. Yi Jae-hai's eyes, dazedly staring at the clock, was suddenly blocked by a head full of black hair. Hey, crybaby, you planning to stay behind for the night classes today? And no, NG. It had already been 28 days since the regression, but she still hadn't gotten used to that nickname. Crybaby. When was the last time she heard someone call her that? Once upon a time, she had other nicknames like that, and she had truly returned to such a time. Really, I was just asking, but why so suddenly? The other girl's eyes arched as if she was smiling. For every single day during the past 4 years, Yi Jae-hai had never forgotten those eyes. They belonged to a pale-skinned girl somewhat smaller than her. The blouse of her school uniform was missing a button, her worn-out name tag where her name could still be found. When she opens her eyes, the bloodshot irises would be staring right back her. Yi Jae-hai's trembling right hand was clutching onto the pant leg of her gym uniform. Jae-hai, it'll be all right. Yi Jae-hai desperately grabbed her trembling hand. You must live. Yi Jae-hai. Her friend's hand approached from the air. Yi Jae-hai avoided that hand almost as if she was having a seizure. Sorry, were you saying something? She hurriedly asked. Are you feeling okay? Yeah, I'm fine. You want to bounce together around 7? We must not. Yi Jae-hai shot up from her seat and shouted out even before she realized it. Her classmates sitting near her all looked in her direction immediately. She sat back down and spoke again. We'll be high school seniors in a little while, right? So we gotta study hard for that. Crybaby, you sure you're not sick somewhere? 20 minutes before the apocalypse. The bell denoting the start of the first night class period went off. Yi Jae-hai pulled something out from her inner pocket, a small box covered in a crinkled wrapper. Boraya here. What is it? Her friend saw the box and extended her hand. However, before handing over the item, Yi Jae-hai told her friend in no uncertain terms first. You mustn't open it right now, okay? Only open it when it's 10 minutes before 7, understand? You didn't put insects in this thing, right? You know I've got a weak heart, don't you? Yi Jae-hai momentarily froze at those words. No, don't worry. I will definitely make sure you won't die. She finished what she wanted to say and stood up abruptly from her seat. Then, she pulled out a longsword stashed behind the classroom locker. Her surprised friend was still looking in her direction. Where are you going? Her friend asked. Bathroom. Yi Jae-hai immediately left the classroom. With good timing, the teacher in charge was walking towards her. Yi Jae-hai, what are you doing? Go back inside the class. Night classes have begun already. And what are you carrying on your ball? Teacher Nim, are you on duty today? It was the ethics teacher wearing the horn-rimmed glasses, with a slender physique and somewhat haggard eyes. Teacher Nim, Please don't forget to open the No 2 locker in the staff room later. Yijai slipped past the teacher, but the latter hurriedly reached out to her shoulder. Where are you, Erg? Why is she so strong? Hey, Yijai. Yijai broke into a sprint. She ran down the stairs in an instant, entered the teacher's staff room and stole the keys to the broadcast studio. She then ran up to the third floor, her heart threatening to explode along the way. The first scenario of the Tipung girls, high location, began several minutes earlier than other locations. That was the reason why Yijai had been deployed in this very location. While panting breathlessly, she managed to unlock the door to find the rather familiar sight of the studio. The Tipung girls, boasted pretty high-end broadcasting equipment. Not only that, the school was given the authority to make broadcasts to the surrounding regions in case of emergency, as well. While listening to the voice of the teacher still looking for her coming from downstairs, Yijai pulled out the emergency power source prepared earlier. She then calmly set up the broadcasting equipment. As she connected the wiring, some memories in her mind also began to get connected, as well. She used to work here as a crew member, and during the lunch hour she'd play the music she liked. That was her life. At least until the apocalypse came knocking. She realized it once more while looking at her still-alive friends. The only person to survive in the classroom on that fateful day was her and her alone. Yijai. She was startled by the voice and looked back, only to find an unexpected person there. Suyong Ihane. She must have been waiting for a while. Han Suyong raised her body up from the darkness and quietly studied Yijai's face before speaking up. You don't look so good. I'm fine. Yijai stayed silent for a little while, then spoke again. The scenario, it's going to start, right? Otherwise, I might get suspended later, you know. It'll start. By the way, you don't really have start yours from here. You should hurry up and go to another location. Let me take care of this place for you. No, this is where I need to start. Yijai smiled. Because this is where the wounded sword demon was born after all. She then slowly sucked in her breath. The setting up of the equipment was finally finished. 10 minutes before the apocalypse. And then it began. Along with the kugugugu noise, the sensation of the world's nature changing could be felt. Then, the sounds akin to drums being ripped apart came from an unknown location. And what came after that was, oh my, the channel here opened up sooner than scheduled. Can you hear me? Yijai looked at Han Suyong. The moment she saw the latter's face, she knew. Somewhat humorously, they had been living only for this moment. There is no need to panic, everyone. Let me say this first of all. This situation, it's not a film shoot. It's not a terror incident, nor are you currently dreaming. No, everyone, you're. That was the voice of the Dakibai she hated the most. Screams resounded out from every classroom. Main Scenario 1, Proof of Worth has begun. That was the signal to commence with their planned operation. Emergency broadcast will now begin. Yijai's own voice was coming out from the speakers. Everyone, please listen to me. Those inside the classrooms, please open up the cabinet for the cleaning tools, while those in the staff room, please open the No 2 locker. Hurry. Yijai knew. Her companions must be making the exact same face as hers about now. Everyone should be witnessing this sight through the display panel the Dakibai had brought up. There is no need for you to kill each other. At least this time there is no need. Yijai thought about her companions. She recalled the promises made to them before coming to this world. At least I want to choose what I kill. Shin Yuseung wouldn't start by killing a puppy anymore, and I'll save my aunt. Yigil Yong would get to save the person he detested. Rather than going to the army again, I'll kill myself first. Yehyunseong would leave the army, and I really want to save that grandma from back then. Yu Sang-ah would get to save the person she didn't. The probability will only allow for one opportunity, meaning the group regression can't be used twice. And Yu Yonghyuk would never regress again. Finally, during this turn I won't become the wounded sword demon. As the clamor of the school's interior gradually died down, Yijai opened her mouth once more. Everyone, have you all found one for yourselves? Just like Kim Dak-ya of the past chucking the grasshoppers to other people. Everyone, throw those things down to the floor with everything you got. Along with those words, Yijai broke the ampule held tight in her hand. You have slaughtered a total of 133 life forms. Slaughter breakdown, 133 frog eggs. Acquired coins will be halved as you have slaughtered life forms lacking defensive capability. Total of 6650 coins have been acquired. Main Scenario 1, Proof of Worth has concluded. Once more, they shall create a story not found anywhere. The Dakibai in charge belatedly discovered the unfolding situation and appeared before Yijai. What the look here, what's the meaning of this? How can you even? And right next second, a powerful storm of probabilities aftermath began slamming into the entirety of the scenario. Also, the noises of massive amounts of coins being sucked out came from an unknown direction, too. Yijai realized what was happening here. Su-cha-cha-cha-cha. Dear Constellation Nymphs, this is a misunderstanding. Director, no, wait, this isn't my foul. The Bureau's inventory, Accompanied by the noises of the channel being disbanded, the low-grade Dakibai screamed and disappeared. 7:00 p.m. And that was the beginning. The night skis of Seoul were reflected on the windows of the studio. She saw the rift opening up on the other side of the sky. Subway's third line. Everyone please stay calm. Grab one of these and throw it down, hurry. Gwangwamun. Do not panic and break the bottles you just received on the floor. Do that and you will survive. The hospital. Anyone who didn't get an ampule yet. Throughout all the locations in Seoul, unexpected events were taking place at the same time. The prearranged scenario was changing. Unbelievable achievements are occurring simultaneously in every location of the scenario. A massive amount of coins are being taken out from the Bureau. The whole of Starstream was shivering from the explosion of coins. Starstream is stunned by the sudden upheaval of the scenario. Docubus of the Bureau are freaking out at the excessive amount of coins being taken out, and many constellations observing the Korean peninsula are. The baptism of coins exploding in the air like fireworks. It was the sight of a world coming to an end. Yijai looked to her side and found Han Soo-young also looking up at the same skis as her. As if she was searching for those who should be looking at them from the night sky. Let's go and save Ajasi. Their operation had just got underway. While gasping out rough, heavy breaths, I regained my consciousness. It was unknown how much time had passed by. I slowly tried to move my body. Arms, legs, shoulders. Without a doubt, the feedback I got had changed a lot from before. Kim Dak-ya you got a lot SM alter. I smiled bitterly and looked down at my shrunken hand. The digits of my fingers had shortened by at least 1 centimeter compared to the last time I saw them. With a slightly exhausted voice, I asked a question. How many regression turns have I seen so far? 7862 RN. I had no idea that reading something with every fiber of your being would be this difficult. Every time Young-hyuk and his comrades lived through one regression turn, I too had to live through it. The second turn, the third, the fourth, and the fifth. That is THEDSTNY of THE most ancient dream. I read and then read again, the fables created by the countless choices, and I watched various world lines spun off from them over and over again. Kim Dak-ya read the world as if he was walking along a distant beach. Fables waves rolled in and rolled out, and I gradually lost something of mine every time that happened. When I recalled something abruptly and looked back, I saw my own footprints left behind. Those prints were soon washed away by the incoming waves, and after staring at the disappearing traces, I'd resume my walk forward. Whenever I recalled the fact that I was gradually forgetting things within this flood of fables, I began thinking about the regression turn I lived in, and then the happiness of the people who should still be living there. If I did, Lud. The tips of my hands were trembling. I suddenly couldn't remember the regression turn number I lived in. I unknowingly looked behind me, but the only things remaining there were Yu Jung-hyuk's past regression turns. And what remains at the end will be the desire to see the next story. I looked down at my hands, now much smaller. What was waiting for me at the end of this long, long journey? Kim Dakya recalled the most ancient dream he saw during the final scenario. Would I eventually become the most ancient dream I saw back then? Would I lose all of my memories and become a giant mass of unconsciousness that dreamt of an infinite universe? He didn't want to end up like that. I needed to think, I needed to remember. When I came to, my hand was clutching onto my smartphone out of an old habit. This small world protected me whenever I became too anxious and too nervous. The black screen, its battery having lost its charge a long time ago, reflected my face. I crafted a simple fable and used it to operate the phone. That prompted a familiar wallpaper to pop up, and that's where the novel that started all of this was. 3 Ways to Survive in a Ruined World, Final Version, TXT. Until now, I deliberately avoided reading this final version. I was scared that, if I read it, something somewhere would become set in stone. I didn't want the future my comrades were supposed to live in to be decided by a story written by someone else. However, shouldn't it be okay now? The Kim Dakya Company story had ended, and my black square had been decided as well. If I read this, wouldn't I be able to remember all those that I've forgotten? I still didn't know who TLS 123 was. And that's why I was curious. What did the author write on this final version? What was the conclusion the author came up with? And this story, where and how was it supposed to end? I slowly sucked in my breaths and extended my shrunken finger towards the text file. Just like that day when I first began reading The Ways of Survival. And so, that's how Kim Dakya's last reading session began. Epilogue 2, Not Found Anywhere 6 Fin. Chapter 532, Epilogue 3 Author's Words 1. My thumb slowly extended and touched the cold screen. Right at that moment, something like a spark danced just above the display. A new file has been downloaded. 3 Ways to Survive in a Ruined World, Final Revised Version, TXT. In that short time period, the name of the file had changed. The Final Revised Version. I clicked on the file almost subconsciously. But why was this? The file had been scrolled almost all the way down to its bottom-most section from the get-go. It felt as if the edits had been finished only a few moments ago. Without thinking too much about it, I scrolled down even further. Did the epilogue of The Ways of Survival get added at the end, the one I didn't get to read? The file continued on from the point where the original novel came to an end. It was a story that I hadn't seen before. I unconsciously began reading it out loud. Epilogue 3, Author's Words. Each regression turn would reach their conclusion in their own terms. It was the same story for the 1863rd turn. You have cleared all the scenarios of Starstream. She did it. Countless sentences brushed past her head the moment she saw that message. The Dakibai King was collapsed on the ground before her eyes, and the companions from the 1863rd turn she had led were all here, too. Captain, we won. Kim Nam-woon was sobbing away nonstop. Only after spotting Yi Hyun-seong walking in closer to support her did it feel real to her that she had finally done it. This was the end of the 1863rd turn. What a long battle it had been. From when she of the third turn was suddenly summoned to the 1863rd, all the way to greeting the suitable end of this world. She nearly gave up several times in the middle, though. Even then, the reason why she didn't was because of what that idiot said back then. Going to the next scenario is better than sleeping forever. That idiot who also came from the same third turn as her. The man who wore the same coat and used the same weapon as her. The apocalypse dragon being freed doesn't mean everything's over. You know it too, don't you? That idiot who ruined her plan, freed the apocalypse dragon, and eventually managed to even eject Yu Yonghyuk from the scenario too. Even now, she could vividly recall the scenes from those moments by closing her eyes. The scene of a character breaking past his story and gaining his freedom. Captain, we did it. We really did it. Hyun-seong could barely hide his joy. Han Soo-young killed the lit cigarette in her hand and addressed him. Support everyone and return to base. What about you, Cap? I'll be right behind you after smoking one more, so go on ahead. We can't do that. This slow dude, why was he so quick on the uptake now? Han Soo-young glanced at the archangel standing next to Hyun-seong. Jafil, the commander of the Crimson Cosmos, Jafil, the archangel that crossed to this world line together with that idiot from the third turn. Let's go meet S.H.I.E.L.D. No, hang on a minute, Captain. While lighting up her very last cigarette, Han Soo-young watched on as the archangel took her companions back to Earth. The companions from the ways of survival were getting further away. She saw how they kept shedding tears of satisfaction derived from successfully clearing all the scenarios and could only smile wryly. Jafil, her wings spread out wide, glanced in Han Soo-young's direction as she grew further away. Are you planning to go alone? Instead of a reply, Han Soo-young waved around her cigarette light. And then, after all of her companions had disappeared, she slowly looked behind her. The final wall. The wall that blocked the end of this world line, and also recording everything found within this universe. Han Soo-young was aware of this wall's existence, and not only that, she knew how to open it too. She got to take a peek at a few scenes while connected to the third turn's Han Soo-young, and more importantly, information she got from Kim Dak-ya paying a visit to this world line proved to be the crucial key as well. The wall that decides samsara has discovered its intended position. Han Soo-young began slotting in the walls she had gathered ahead of time into their spots. The wall that divides the good and evil has discovered its intended position. The wall of impossible communication has discovered its intended position. However, she was still short of one fragment. Throughout the entirety of the universe, only one guy possessed this fragment, the fourth wall. Han Soo-young silently stared at her own hand, before slowly placing it against the last open spot on the wall. Fable, predictive plagiarism, has begun its storytelling. She certainly didn't possess that wall. Even then, shouldn't she be able to craft a fragment similar to that somehow? Fable, ultimate lie, has begun its storytelling. Han Soo-young began squeezing out every fable she could imagine. She had witnessed the actual form of the fourth wall, just once. She definitely saw a portion of that wall when it blocked her attempt at using the Eye of Truth. Fable, predictive plagiarism, is being pushed to its absolute limit. Her fingers moved rapidly and began writing a fable of the wall that she came up with, the one single story that might be the basis of this wall. Su-cha-cha-cha-chun. I'm Dak-ya. Kim Dak-ya, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter. My father wanted me to become a strong man even if I was left alone, so he gave me such a name. Right next moment, Han Soo-young's hand submerged into the wall. Next up was her arm, shoulder, head, and her torso, and eventually her entire figure sank into the wall. The final wall system is surprised by your fable information and temporary error has occurred in the system. Han Soo-young fought back against the rising vomit and felt around the ground. She did it. She managed to infiltrate inside the stinking wall unscathed. The first thing she saw after raising her head was a small room. There were quite a few bundles of packed luggage and several small display panels decorating this place. She was familiar with the fable coming out from those panels. Constellation, Demon King of Salvation, has reached his black. Demon King of Salvation's black square is eternity. That was the conclusion of the third turn. That idiot had also cleared the scenario of his world line to its very last, in other words, and at long last, he had decided to become this world's soul reader. In the world without the scenarios, filled with only the desire to see the next story, a certain child, possessing a truly horrifying power of imagination. He'd continue to become smaller and eventually become this world's subconsciousness. And with that, he'd continue on with this never-ending story. The 1863rd turns Han Soo-young could tell. If you ask her how she knew, well, she just did. Even I would have chosen that conclusion after all. This world existed for the story. Even Yoo Young-hyuk's story, even Kim Dak-ya's in the end, they were all simply stories marching forward towards the one true completion. Han Soo-young stared at the subway train traveling further and further away inside the screen. For a long while, she wordlessly stared at this universe's God, journeying towards the world that no one would ever remember. And then, a few steps in front of her, there was a certain existence staring at the same screen while dabbing away its tears with a handkerchief. Hiayik. So then, you are the true Dakibai King, are you? How did you manage to enter this place? The Dakibai King, her group, definitely killed outside, was standing completely fine before her eyes. Han Soo-young unsheathed the dark heavenly demon sword and asked, I was wondering why you were so weak. Okay, so, why didn't you fight us seriously? And what exactly have you been doing in here? Hang on a second. The scenarios are already over. I don't have any thoughts of fighting you. It was true. She couldn't sense any fighting intentions from the Dakibai King as it hurriedly waved both of its hands. Its eyes gleamed as it observed the sparks faintly dancing around Han Soo-young's entire figure. Its irises were fixed on the final wall, suffering from error. You repaired the final wall. What a shocking talent that is. Just who are you? Your soul is, it's like the amalgamation of various talents. What were you planning by using such a puppet? Are you looking down on this world line? What do you mean looking down? Every world line is precious. It's just that. This world line has lost its meaning now. Its most important fable had come to an end just now after all. While saying that, the Dakibai King shifted his gaze back to the panels. Han Soo-young quietly roused up her fables, but the king simply snickered back at her. What are you getting so angry for? Regardless of what, the story of you and your group has concluded safely, didn't it? Don't ever mess with this world line's conclusion. The moment she said that, the scenes from the 1863rd turn popped up on the panels. Yi Hyun-seong and Kim Nam-woon were supporting each other. The backs of her companions were captured in a widescreen shot. Of course I won't. It's not even an important world line anyway. Han Soo-young saw how the Dakibai King shrugged its shoulders in total disinterest, and felt this powerful sense of futility. Was this how the story of this regression turn ends? Was it really okay to end it in this fashion? And besides, the new, most ancient dream would not wish to see such a thing happen anyway. After hearing that, Han Soo-young looked up at the empty air above without even realizing it. The most ancient dream. The Kim Dak-ya, she knew had become one such existence, which meant that the current him might be looking at this spectacle somehow. You think he will reply to you because you looked up like that? Your world has people who believe in their chosen deities, but did those gods ever respond each and every time their believers called out to them? This and that aren't the same. Well, you can think of it any way you want. Anyways, this one would like to abscond from here, so can I leave now? Where are you planning to go? Since this world line story has ended, I should go to another place, don't you agree? I've been working hard all this time, so... Well, there's this place I really wanted to visit since from a while ago, and... Oh, so you wish to run away all the while abandoning the scenario, just like that. Why didn't you get born in a world line with an honest, hard-working Dakibai King then? Han Soo-young frowned deeply and emitted waves of energy once more. Hey, I clawed and fought my way to get here, so shouldn't you give me some kind of a clear reward or something? The Dakibai King spat out a long sigh. Well, fine, granting one wish shouldn't be so hard. I want to meet that idiot. Almost immediately after saying it, Han Soo-young couldn't believe what she had done. Why did she blurt that out of all things? Because you are also there. I believe in you of the third turn, you see. She wasn't sure what this frustration in her heart meant. Just that meeting that guy again might help her understand what she felt so frustrated about, or so she thought. The Dakibai King tilted his head. When you say that, idiot, you. Han Soo-young pointed to the panels with her chin. The Dakibai King jumped up in shock and roared out, "Are you freaking blind or something? That great one is no longer in existence the likes of me can ever meet. I don't care if it's a version of him from another world line. I also don't care even if he's a version who hasn't seen the end yet, too." Kim Dakya couldn't be seen anymore within the panels. "I want to meet that idiot one more time. There is only one of him in this universe." Since the Dakibai King was being so adamant, it could only mean that her wish was truly impossible. But then the creature stared at the downhearted Han Soo-young and opened its mouth with a sly look on its face. "Well, actually, there is a way to make your wish come true." What was that? Now normally, that world line is forbidden from entry, but I've memorized its coordinates while the new, most ancient dream was ascending to his position. However, the most ancient dream in that place will not recognize you. Han Soo-young's expression brightened as she asked, "Where is that place?" "It's the place I wanted to visit originally. I've always longed to go there at least once when this universe's great epic came to its conclusion, you see." While saying that, the Dakibai King raised both of its hands up high in the air. The aloof universe of Star Stream was unfolding up there. The Dakibai King looked up at that view with a solemn expression and addressed her. "Aren't you curious? Where did this universe start from? Who crafted these intricate galaxies of fables? Who created this thing called scenario in this world? Just who is responsible for perfecting the world of pure contradictions where the result gives birth to the cause, and the cause becomes the result?" Han Soo-young finally figured out the Dakibai King's true aim. This guy, it was trying to head towards the world line where this universe actually began. The world where the 3 ways to survive in a ruined world began. The universe where TLS 123 was. "I'm going there to meet my God. If you want, I'll let you tag along on my journey." Su-jud-jud-jud. Along with the deafening roar, the storm of probabilities aftermaths powerfully rampaged between her and the Dakibai King. As she got sucked into this wall of pain akin to her soul being ripped into tiny shreds, she briefly caught the Dakibai King's grin. "Let's meet again after making through this alive, shall we?" That was the last memory Han Soo-young could remember of the 1863rd turn. Hyuk. She shot up from her bed. The time was 2 in the morning. Her entire back was soaked in sweat. The second hand of the clock continued tick by. Was it all a dream? Han Soo-young ungainly got up. The sensation of soft, luxurious duvet wrapped around her limbs. For some reason, this bed felt alien to her. She drank the water located on the bedside bureau, entered the adjoining bathroom and switched on the light. The orange light bulb illuminated the darkness, and her figure was reflected on the mirror. Her neatly trimmed hair that had grown all the way down to her shoulders. The beauty spot that seemed to get even more pronounced when she narrowed her eyes. This was undoubtedly her own face. Indeed, it really was, yet. What the hell? Suddenly, it felt as if her heart was tightening up. "You have entered the first world line." She dashed outside the bathroom. Plastic figurines were displayed on the dressing table alongside the volumes of manga. She also spotted the familiar school bag next to the bed. Eventually, the darkness within this house no longer felt foreign to her. Her trembling hands opened the school bag, only for the textbooks within to tumble out. Neatly written words could be seen on the cover of one of those books. Han Soo-young, Student No. 2, Classroom 2, 6th year. Han Soo-young had become a 13-year-old girl. Epilogue 3, Author's Words 1 Fin. Chapter 533, Epilogue 3 Author's Words 2. She had suddenly become a 6th-year elementary school kid. How come? For the remainder of dawn, Han Soo-young stewed in her stupefaction. Initially, she wondered if she had regressed like Yu Young-hyuk. Self-regulated activity period has concluded. Next self-regulated activity period is scheduled to take place in around 14 hours. The body's control has been rescinded. However, she got to figure out what happened to her after those messages floated up, and she lost control of her own body. You can exercise the control only when the main body's ego has entered the sleep mode. She had taken possession of her own younger self. Could this be a new type of scenario? No matter how long she waited, though, stuff like scenario messages never popped up. She watched her younger self wake up with a disheveled face, wash up, eat breakfast, and head off to school. She couldn't do anything else besides that. And exactly 14 hours later, the following messages popped up. The main body's ego has fallen asleep. Self-regulated activity will now begin. Control of the body has been handed over to you. She'd stay as a dumb little 13-year-old kid during the daytime, while during the night, her body's control would revert to her like clockwork. And then, she'd start crying out in lamentation like this next. What the hell am I supposed to do here? Her head was in a mess. If this was really the first world line, her actions of now could influence the rest of the world lines yet to be born in the future. After sucking in deep breaths, she decided to first check out the situation she was in. Expensive but simple furniture filled this 3-bedroom plus living room house. Han Soo-young was quite familiar with it. The housekeeper that came to work early every morning, the lazy guard that monitored all visitors, and her parents that came to visit her on the weekends in alternating turns while being driven on new cars every time. Her father was a National Assembly member, while mother was an actress. Han Soo-young never thought of them as her family, though. The world didn't know of her existence, and her so-called parents, they probably didn't want her existence to be revealed to the world either. It's really the same. Han Soo-young browsed through the pile of books on top of the desk belonging to her 13-year-old self. Some were books she really liked, while some she couldn't even recognize. The faint, blurry memories must be held in possession by her other self. In any case, it was crystal clear that she had read them all, judging by the hand stains left on the books. To each and everyone, a life that's only theirs exists. She saw a line drawn under some throwaway quote and felt a chill creep down her skin. Such unimpressive sentences piled up and would eventually go on to become the human Han Soo-young. Probably. It was then that he heard a sound of doorbell going off. At this late hour, she hurriedly pressed the intercom button to confirm. At first, she wondered if it was the guard, but when she took a closer look at the intercom screen, he had been already knocked out cold. And a middle-aged man wearing a fedora was smiling in her direction and waving his hand. "It's me, Docuby King. Why do you look like that? When I arrived here, I suddenly morphed into a human being. I'm almost fully stripped of my system authority, too. But why have you become so much younger? You made me like this, didn't you?" "I certainly did not. The influence of the great probability has, actually, forgive me for this intrusion." Han Soo-young groaned and guided the Docuby King inside the house. "Do you live alone?" it asked her. "I do. You seem to have some spare rooms. I'm telling you this now, don't expect me to put you up in here." The Docuby King pouted in disappointment from that. Han Soo-young boiled a simple tea bag and brought it out, then asked her guest, "Okay, what is your reason for bringing me to this world line? We shall go and search for the Creator together." "Hell, that's something we should think about from here on. You came here without any preparations or knowing anything." "Of course not. I do have my suspicions, for instance that novel." Han Soo-young's expression hardened. As expected, it seemed that the Docuby King had been aware of the existence of ways of survival. "The author of that novel is probably the god that constructed this universe," said the Docuby King. TLS 123. The author who wrote 3 Ways to Survive in a Ruined World. Han Soo-young sighed softly and fetched her notebook PC. "I've already tried to search for it, though." There are no matching results. That novel, it hasn't been uploaded yet. Maybe something had gone wrong somewhere. No, it's more like we came here too early. I'm pretty sure that the serialization will start this year. How do you know that? If what I heard is right, the first time Kim Dok-ya read this novel was when he was 15. I'm 13 right now, so he must be 15. She recalled a certain crumpled memo pad Kim Dok-ya gave to her in the past. He must have been in a rush, but he still managed to write down all sorts of information on that little thing. That great one is 15 years old, is it? Something's rather cute. I'm more curious about something else, though. Such as, what will happen if the ways of survival doesn't appear in this world? Excuse me. The Dakibai King stumbled a little from her question before speaking up. If that happens, then the Great One won't get to read the novel. Since he won't get to read it, that naturally means the ways of survival won't become reality either, right? That might be plausible. At the very least, the apocalypse might not get triggered for the world lines about to be branched off from here. In that case, if they could prevent Kim Dok-ya from reading the ways of survival, then that meant they could potentially stop the apocalypse of this world line too. I think I get the general gist of your idea. Are you trying to stop the serialization of the ways of survival? The Dakibai King asked. That's right. Han Soo-young nodded her head. As long as this TLS 123 was not a supernatural existence, she might be able to prevent the destruction of this world with her powers alone. But then the Dakibai King tackled her down verbally. Yours is indeed an intriguing idea. However, you don't even know who the author is. Have you ever read that novel before? No, I haven't, have you? Yeah, Han Soo-young pondered something for a little bit before continuing on. That novel, it's really badly written. From the very beginning, it's filled with way too much exposition, while the chapter lengths are all over the place, and the work doesn't even try to accommodate its potential readers. Only Kim Dok-ya alone managed to read it from start to finish. Ho, as expected of the great. You think such a thing even makes sense? The Dakibai King narrowed its eyes as if to ask, what are you talking about? Han Soo-young continued on. An author who doesn't read his own novel, someone like that doesn't exist, and because of the unique traits of a web novel platform, you can never perfectly fix anything, so you don't have a choice but to reread your uploaded chapters several times even if to check for typos and stuff. But then, past the 100th chapter, the view count became just 1 for the remainder of that novel. Only then did the Dakibai King's eyes widen, as if it finally understood what she was saying. Could it be? It is, the author of The Ways of Survival, that I think is none other than that idiot. I don't know why he's denying being the author even after writing it himself, but I'm sure about this. One of her old habits was to leave a blank Korean word processor page displayed on her notebook. While looking at the blinking cursor, she spoke up. We need to find Kim Dok-ya before he starts that damn Ways of Survival. The problem was with how to find that Kim Dok-ya. Do you know where he lives? I no longer have the power of the system, so we need to personally locate him, said the Dakibai King. I'm sure he's somewhere around Seoul. Don't you know any other distinguishing traits of his? He's probably hiding somewhere, busy reading fantasy novels or something. How are we even supposed to find him with such information? Arg, I don't know. It's your job to come up with something. I'm only an elementary school kid, you know. After saying that, Han Soo-young blacked out immediately. When she came to, the Dakibai King must have gone somewhere, as it was nowhere to be found. This was why I always dozed off back in school. She always wondered why she felt so sleepy whenever she got to school, as it turned. Her condition was due to another ego waking up and doing its own thing during the night time. Since waiting for the Dakibai King proved to be rather boring, Han Soo-young did what she could during the early hours of the morning. Most of that was browsing through various blogs. That guy, I'm pretty sure he was a blogger. And when even that became too boring, she created a secret folder in the notebook and started writing novels. Most of them were simple minifictions, written solely for the purpose of keeping her writer's sense sharp. However, something truly strange happened the next day she completed them. Her 13-year-old ego, active during the daytime, ended up causing a big event. Soo-young, since when did you learn to write so well? The school suddenly hosted a writing contest, and she won the top prize. Not only that, the content of her writing was exactly the same as the minifiction she cobbled together during the early hours, too. Just it came flooding out, her 13-year-old self replied. Han Soo-young looked back and recalled that people began saying she had a talent for writing around the time she was 13 or so. With here as the starting point, she would earnestly walk on the path of the full-fledged writer. And so a month passed by like that, then yet another one. Han Soo-young grew rather invested in spectating her 13-year-old self living her life. As for the 15-year-old Kim Dak-ya, he too must be living somewhere in this world. When she thought about that, she felt happy for some reason. What should she first say to that unlucky idiot when they eventually get to meet each other? Time went by pretty quickly. September flew by, and it soon became October. Every now and then, her parents would stop by to leave behind presents she didn't want, and went away again. Finally, it was December. It was around here that Han Soo-young began to realize something didn't feel right. There are no matching results. Why didn't TLS 123 start his serialization already? Did she do something wrong and that changed the future? But that couldn't be possible. She hadn't even met Kim Dak-ya yet. What would happen if the Ways of Survival is not serialized this year? Would this world continue to exist without the Ways of Survival? Maybe that wouldn't be such a bad world, in a way. If the Ways of Survival didn't exist, then this world wouldn't have to greet its apocalypse either. If so, it was then she heard the phone go off. She figured it must have been her parents again, but when she picked up the receiver, "I've found him." "What, where?" "No, hang on, where are you now?" Her heart began pounding away. Kim Dak-ya had been found, finally. However, the next set of words was something that not even her predictive plagiarism could have predicted. I'm in the place called a hospital's emergency ward." Han Soo-young avoided the guard's eyes and climbed aboard an early hours taxi cab. The hospital itself wasn't too far. Doctors and nurses were busily going about their businesses despite the hour being what it was. Screams of pain from the patients intermittently rang out, and empty beds were deeply permeated with the lengthy tendrils of death scent. Even in a world without scenarios, people continued to die. These were very small apocalypses. This was where lives not recorded went to disappear. Han Soo-young, currently half in a daze, scanned all the stretchers. And that's how she found the 15-year-old Kim Dak-ya lying on one, his face deeply sunken and pale. An IV needle was stuck in the boy's wrist, wrapped tightly in bandages. "I'm telling you, it's not our fault. In his school, That came from a face not closely resembling Kim Dak-ya's. A married couple, seemingly cousins once removed from the unconscious boy, were shouting at a doctor in clear bouts of irritation. Han Soo-young stared at them before demanding an answer from the Dakibai King. How did this guy end up like this? Apparently, he jumped out of the classroom window. Han Soo-young slowly reached out and checked Kim Dak-ya's current condition. Crude cast and bandages wrapped around his body. Swollen bruises all over his face. His arm, where not one solid muscle could be felt, lay powerlessly on the bed. Han Soo-young held the boy's hand. It was as small as her own. Do something," she muttered out. "Please don't worry. These aren't fatal wounds." Thankfully, the classroom floor wasn't high, and he collided with a tree on his way down, so. "That's not what I meant." The married couple walking in closer from the distance could be seen. They must have discovered Han Soo-young, since they seemed to be shouting something, or rather in her direction. However, their voices didn't register in her brain. Just why? If it weren't for that novel, I'd probably have died back then. She wasn't sure if this was her own memory or the third turn. You and your exaggerations. I'm telling you the truth." Ancient, creaky memories rushed in like tidal waves while hiding within all the ringing noises in her head. The Dakibai King supported her, and they left the hospital. She saw the medical staff, and the paramedics hurriedly moving the new patient into the emergency ward. We managed to find him somehow, didn't we? Now that I've seen him personally, it was true all along. Did you sense that incredible aura coming out from his entire figure? And now, as soon as he opens his own world then, as if it was looking forward to the apocalypse soon to visit this world line, the Dakibai King continued to yap on and on. Han Suyong muttered out as she stumbled ungainly. Kim Dakya said he read that novel when he was 15. Yes, so soon it. What if he didn't get to read that novel? What will happen to him? Pardon? If the ways of survival didn't start, then this world would not be destroyed. However, what would happen to Kim Dakya instead? Hello. Are you actually crying? Kim Dakya's tragedy was a rather common one. If only a small number of gazes fell upon him, if only just a tiny little bit of goodwill was shown his way, then it'd have been easily overcome. However, he couldn't exactly expect those small gazes or goodwill in the situation he found himself in. Realistically speaking, could a 13-year-old elementary school kid be able to save anyone? One who can barely regain herself only during early hours, no less. But why are you crying? That didn't mean she could entrust it to this Dakibai King either. Not only did it speak weirdly, but it also couldn't use the system, and its character couldn't even be trusted, so how could she expect such a bum of a Dakibai to? Han Suyong dazedly stared at her own hands. That novel saved me, so I should pay my debt to its protagonist. The way to save Kim Dakya. Hey, you have any money on you? Pardon? Give me 5,000, no, 10,000 won. Han Suyong quickly snatched the Dakibai King's cash and rushed towards the nearby PC Bang. The latter screamed and chased after her. That's all the money I have. She sneaked past the PC Bang's owner dozing off, stole a charge card, logged into an unused computer, and clicked on the internet browser. She typed in the address of the web novel platform she always connected to and searched for a certain author's name again. There are no matching results. Even now, TLS 123 hadn't shown up yet. The end of the year was fast approaching, yet the serialization hadn't started yet. Han Suyong quietly glared at the monitor for a little while before clicking on the platform's members' registration icon. She didn't know who TLS 123 was. However, if TLS 123 was, at least, not Kim Dakya, if the author of that damn novel was someone else then. The applicable username is currently not in use. Would you like to use this username? Perhaps it didn't really matter who it was. Her hand gripping the mouse was trembling hard. The Tragedies button rested against the tip of her finger. If she clicked it, then the apocalypse of countless world lines would begin. However, if she didn't press it, yes, small world she witnessed would disappear. Dear TLS 123 Nim, congratulations on your registration. Han Suyong confirmed the remaining time. 3 hours remaining in the self-regulated activity period. Once the main ego wakes up, your control will forcibly be rescinded. She opened up the word processor and began typing away immediately. As if she was unspooling a manuscript stuck inside her head for the longest time ever, her fingers continued to move in a brilliant fashion. She showed not a single error in her typing. Her exquisite sentences that seemingly carved out a world in its entirety. However, arrangements that lacked any consideration towards the potential reader, and expositions that had no immersive devices to speak of. She typed and typed some more of this boring story, all the while expecting that, without a doubt, one person would definitely get to read this story. This is a lie. Countless worlds were destroyed by her hands, and countless characters died because of her. At least until it can become the truth. All the possibilities that her predictive plagiarism could guess were overflowing inside her head. Some of them became the narrative, while some others became expositions. And so, how long passed by like that? Han Soo-young's fingers eventually came to a stop. Yu Young-hyuk stood before the vast, endless calamity pouncing on him and spoke. It was not possible to figure out every facet of the story through the predictive plagiarism. Until I witness the end of the scenario, I shall never give up. That's why. She wasn't sure whether Yu Young-hyuk really said something like that or not, because all of this was from her imagination after all, because she had created everything. That's why she wanted to write these very words. Even if by borrowing Yu Young-hyuk's mouth, she wanted to write these words and put them in there. You shouldn't give up either. Han Soo-young panted breathlessly and slowly raised her head. When she looked behind her, she discovered the Docubai King staring at the computer's screen with an enraptured expression. Hey, Docubai King. The creature slowly knelt down before her and waited for her next words. I'm going to sleep. You have spent too much of your mental power during a short period of time. Your ego will become subconsciousness, and when she regained her consciousness, she was lying on her own bed. It was midnight. It seemed that a full day's cycle went by after she blacked out. God admit, what the hell did I do that for? While holding her head, Han Soo-young got up from the bed. The blue wallpaper of the notebook PC resting on the desk caught her eye. She launched the internet browser without thinking too much about it and connected to the web novel platform. Several comments had already popped up on her story she uploaded last night. Most of them were crappy, toxic comments about how no jam it was, or how it was too obsessed with expositions and stuff. I quickly wrote that in mere 2 hours, so obviously. Besides, I was trying my best to be as close to the ways of survival, you know. Among all those comments, a particular one caught her attention. Dear Authornum, it was a great read. May I ask about your release schedule? Such an unparalleled naivete that made him use his real name as the username. Han Soo-young stared at that name for a long, long time. She looked closer and discovered another comment attached to it. Are you going to release another chapter tomorrow? She repeatedly clenched and unfurled her fists many times. Sweat was soaking her small hands. Is it really okay for me to write this? Even then, isn't it fine this way? Han Soo-young hesitated for a long time before typing her reply, while thinking about a certain someone still alive beyond this screen. While thinking about a certain boy who'd breathe, eat, shout some nonsense about I'm Yu Young-hyuk, and do whatever it takes to endure his own apocalypse. And so, the story of a regressor that reached 3149 chapters started in this manner. Yes, a new chapter will be published tomorrow. Epilogue 3, Author's Words 2 Fin. Chapter 534, Epilogue 3 Author's Words 3. Han Soo-young continued to write. The short period of time given to her during the wee hours was completely devoted to Kim Dokya. Hey, Docubai King. Yes, my dear God. I told you to stop calling me that. Anyways, The Ways of Survival will be published 7 in the evenings from now on. The website doesn't have the feature to schedule the chapter releases ahead of time yet, so you hold on to the manuscript and upload them on time for me. If I upload them during dawn, that kid is going to stay up late and wait. He won't get any sleep. I shall do as you command. Han Soo-young spat out a lengthy groan and shifted her gaze back to the manuscript she'd been working on. Yu Young-hyuk examined the events of the previous regression turn. She couldn't possibly write a life that lasted for 1,863 regression turns. 3149 chapters were simply too short to contain a life lived for 1864 times. She had to omit some regression turns, while some others had to be greatly reduced in length. She knew that life didn't really work that way, but at the same time, she had to acknowledge that some lives could only be written in such a manner. Once she came to accept that, writing those lives didn't prove to be too difficult for her. The life of 1,863rd turn Yu Young-hyuk was given to her in its entirety, while she also possessed information from the 3rd turn Kim Dokya as well. Most importantly, though, she was an excellent writer. The margins she couldn't fill up, they would instead be lived out by Yu Young-hyuk himself. Yu Young-hyuk, who'd take his breaths among the flowing contexts of the words and step above the hard ground covered by the pitch-black letters. All she could do was to deliver such Yu Young-hyuk's story. Every time she wrote a single chapter, Kim Dok-ya's life was extended by yet another day. As one sentence after another was compiled and recorded, her own time also ticked forward little by little. The 13-year-old Han Soo-young became 14, then 15 years old. A serialization that would last for 10 long, arduous years had begun. It was tough. She didn't have enough stamina and her young body was simply too frail. Even then, Han Soo-young endured. She thought about Kim Dok-ya beyond the computer screen, also getting older like her. Kim Dok-ya, who hadn't died, hadn't given up and was still enduring his life. Dear Authornim, today, Young-hyuk did. Are you really enjoying a story like this? Although half in doubt, Han Soo-young still continued to write the story. The information I gave you will come in handy later down the line, so take a look whenever you have time. The story would not end as long as someone was reading it. That's how it was with the 1863rd regression turn, once thought to be the last. Authornim, I've been thinking, how about creating a new character by using this opportunity? She checked the comments Kim Dok-ya left behind every day. As she was active only around the early hours, communicating with him in real time was difficult, but she did reply to the questions that seemingly required one. Should I create another main character? If possible, might as well as make her a pretty female character. Aha, you mean a beautiful young girl. Facial features more than enough to slap Yu Young-hyuk's cheeks twice. A beautiful young boy with brilliant blonde locks glared at Yu Young-hyuk and shouted out, "Hey you, dumpling man." But Authornim. Kim Dok-ya, 16 years old, 17, 18. He'd consume this story and grow older, and eventually become the most ancient dream. Despite knowing that fact, Han Soo-young still enjoyed this time period, a world of a pure white snowfield where letters were wandering around freely. Above this world existed Kim Dok-ya, and so did Han Soo-young. Authornim, I was wondering if Young-hyuk is suffering way too much lately. Sometimes she'd put Yu Young-hyuk through the ringer. It only happened because of her desire to realistically copy and paste the story she already knew. While writing the novel in this manner, she'd fall into a pit of confusion every now and then. Did this event really happen in the past? Couldn't it be more like, it happened because I wrote this? Whatever the truth was, she still gave it her all. She took pride in her work. But at the same time, she had to admit that it was impossible for her to completely rule over her own work. With a pair of seething, boiling eyes, Yu Young-hyuk glared up into the heavens. Sometime in the future, Yu Young-hyuk created by the tips of her hands would meet that Kim Dok-ya for real. Just thinking about that event nearly made her go crazy from time to time. Unprecedented hit novel, SSSSS grade infinite regressor. Around that time, the daytime ego began working as an author in earnest, as well. Of course, she had stolen the nighttime Han Soo-young's talents wholesale, so there was no way that her novel would fail. Not only that, the daytime ego even went to the trouble of creating an anonymous account to leave behind a toxic comment on the ways of survival, too. I'm really worried about the life of the dear Authornim actually writing this junk. What was even more flabbergasting was Kim Dok-ya's DM. Authornim, do know about the novel called SSSSS grade infinite regressor. That novel's setting is exactly the same as the ways of. Han Soo-young smirked and began typing her reply. She thought, right, the dude writing a DM like this accused me of being a plagiarist during the 1863rd turn, did you? I'm happy that my Viewpoint has gone up thanks to the exposure, actually. When she was finished typing the reply, the faint rays of the daybreak had cast onto the world outside the window. Starting from a while ago, she didn't feel refreshed even after waking up. She'd often use up all of her allotted time on writing the novel, and there were times when she couldn't endure the fatigue anymore and fall asleep despite the self-regulated activity period not having ended yet. To make matters worse, her memories were gradually deteriorating as well. Information she heard from Yu Young-hyuk and received from Kim Dak-ya, she couldn't recall them well. Things that happened back in the 1863rd turn were getting blurrier. And also, your fable is being consumed. Even the length of her self-regulated activity period was decreasing gradually. The time continued to tick by, and Han Soo-young continued to write almost every day. At times, she couldn't wake up and ended up wasting an entire day. And due to the worsening fatigue, the number of days she couldn't read Kim Dak-ya's comments increased as well. Author Nim, I'll be joining the military the day after tomorrow. Looks like I'll be sent to the front lines. It's Kim Dak-ya, I'm here at Yonggu. Young-hyuk, I wonder, have you ever shoveled snow before? 20 years old, 21, 22. 371st turn, 621st, 972nd. As Yu Young-hyuk's regression turn numbers grew higher, so did Kim Dak-ya's age. Kim Dak-ya, feeding on Yu Young-hyuk's tragedy, became a high school student, then a university student, and eventually a soldier. Han Soo-young observed the growth of such a man. Her free time decreased even more as the daytime ego, now an adult herself, began staying up during the dawn as well. As the time to polish up the novel gradually dissipated, the Dakibai King's role also naturally grew much more substantial. Please don't worry, I shall fix all the errors, said the Dakibai King. Do you even know anything about grammar? Yes, I do. I'm planning to earn my living that way. A publisher was looking for a part-time proofreader, so I confidently applied for the position. This guy still came across as somewhat unreliable, but she couldn't get anyone else to help her anyway. She definitely couldn't get the help from the daytime ego, for instance. A lot of her strength had been exhausted, and her forgetfulness had worsened greatly in recent times, so it took a lot out of her just to post a reply to Kim Dak-ya's comments. And just like that, a few more years went by like fleeting magic. While writing that sentence, Han Soo-young thought that her life wasn't all that different from Yu Young-hyuk's in some ways. Sometimes, a life really did get omitted like this. However, that didn't mean a life omitted as such left nothing of itself behind, either. That's what she thought while staring at the novel numbering over 3,000 chapters currently compiled before her eyes. On a certain day before the completion, Han Soo-young opened up the platform's chat window in order to write a comment as usual. Please don't give up, dear reader Nim. Did I post a comment like this before? Initially, she figured this was a result of her typing some random things while half submerged in drowsiness. However, there was more than one post that she couldn't remember ever posting here. To answer your question, just when did she post such replies before? No matter how hard she thought about it, she couldn't recall. Not only that, the timestamps of the posts were weird as well. Actually, rather than a mistake in the setting, it's Han Soo-young summoned the Dakibai King right away. When she did, the creature wearing a fedora appeared from the thin air accompanied by the tsu-cha-cha noise. She asked, "Did you write this?" "Yes." "On whose authority?" "I sincerely apologize for not getting your permission beforehand. You seemed very tired lately." Han Soo-young quietly stared at the Dakibai King. This creature came to this world searching for its god, and it now knew who its creator was. Just what are you aiming for? I am merely a storyteller, and as it is with every storyteller, I love to tell a great epic. The world you have created, of course. There is only one reader of this story, though. Do you really believe so? She narrowed her eyes and shot back. I already know what you're scheming, okay? You're planning to turn my novel into a paid service, aren't you? Ever since arriving in this world, she constantly thought about that day. The novel she wrote would become the scenario that would go on to destroy this universe. However, who would dare to do something so horrifying like that? The answer was quite simple when she thought about it. There was only one existence capable of doing something like that in this world line after all. You brought me here for that very purpose, didn't you? I won't deny that, even though it hadn't been long since I realized what my true role was. Faint sparks were dancing all over the Dakibai King's body. That was the evidence of the system's probability growing stronger. Also, it meant that this Dakibai was gradually regaining the power of the king of the storytellers. Han Suyong stared at the dancing sparks before speaking up. So then, the apocalypse will really begin, is that it? Yes. Honestly, I don't get it at all. You know, the chronological sequence doesn't make sense either. The chronological sequence. The only reason why I can write this is because Yu Young-hyuk will live his life in the future, and Kim Dak-ya had read the novel. But for me to write a novel that Kim Dak-ya will read, that's the time paradox. That's what humans call this. However, there are universes that do operate on that principle. A universe where the future is written before the past and the cause is created for the purpose of the end result. I'm sure you're already familiar with such a universe. Han Suyong frowned as if to ask, what on earth are you talking about? The Dakibai King grinned and lightly tapped the computer monitor. Aren't you currently writing one? The stray thoughts and fragments of letters she had thrown around could be found in there. Countless scenes existing outside the time itself, outside the world, waiting to be connected as one. Some scenes became futures despite being written earlier, while some scenes, despite being written later, became the past. Han Suyong's eyes trembled. Are you saying this whole universe is just a novel? If I am to compare it, then yes, something like that. The letters within the screen seemed to ripple. Letters wishing to be loved by someone were flowing outside the monitor after forming pairs and groups with each other. Sentences that sparkled like the stars. Some sentences willingly became the darkness for other sentences, while a certain sentence became light only through those dark words. Some sentences existed for the next sentence, while the next sentence gained its meaning because the first sentence existed. There is no before and after in this universe, and that is precisely the reason why the first world line is being completed very last. Within this giant, endlessly connecting chain, the Dakibai King was smiling rapturously. The universe was created just now, but at the same time it has existed for the past billions of years as well, and a certain beginning only appears after the apocalypse has commenced. Sentences cascaded like a meteor shower. Starstream was singing towards its god. Because Han Suyong wrote The Ways of Survival, Kim Dak-ya got to read it. Because Kim Dak-ya read The Ways of Survival, Yu Young-hyuk began his regression. Because Yu Young-hyuk began his regression, Han Suyong was able to write The Ways of Survival. She might have written them, but these words were completed only after leaving her hands. The story that would save someone, destroy, and help him live. Han Suyong stared at the horrifying trajectory drawn out by those words, and became acutely aware of the fact that she had been thrown into this never-ending cycle. She might be the author responsible for creating this world, but she was also a powerless god. A god that couldn't even save a single reader. A god who was simply a part of this vast, boundless story. Starstream is smiling in your direction. Now behold, isn't this a truly perfect story? Epilogue 3, Author's Words 3 Fin. Chapter 535, Epilogue 3 Author's Words 4. Starstream is looking at its creator. Her eyelids soaked in fatigue slowly closed. As she drifted into the languid sea of unconsciousness, Han Suyong listened to the Dakibai King's voice. Please rest now and sleep, my noble god. And on the next day, The Ways of Survival's final chapter was completed. 3 ways to survive. I've forgotten a few, but one thing for certain, that is. After she finished typing the very last sentence, Han Suyong kept her eyes closed for a very long time. She knew a day like this would eventually come, but now that it was finally here, it didn't feel real to her at all. Her lengthy serialization had finally come to an end. When she slowly looked behind, the Dakibai King was standing there just as she suspected. With a pair of deeply moved eyes, it was staring at the computer monitor. "Hey you," said Han Soo-young. "Yes, my God. Can't you, not do the paid service?" "Dear God, Nim, even if I don't, the story will commence regardless." Han Soo-young could only smile bitterly at the Dakibai king, speaking like a stubborn devotee. The daylight was breaking outside the windows. The sun would rise, and when it was time to set again, the apocalypse would come to visit this world. And then Kim Dakya's story will begin. And I'm destined to disappear, right? Sujut jut. Her fable, what little remained of it, wiggled slightly. There were some stories that might not seem all that excellent or special, but still required an untold sacrifice to complete. To her, The Ways of Survival was one such novel. Your existential fable is in a precarious state. If the future about to unfold was correct, her ego would soon disappear into the main body's vast, boundless subconsciousness. And only after the main body learns the avatar skill would she be reborn with a tiny bit of the old memories. And then, get to live the 1863rd regression turn. If that's indeed the case, what did my life exist for? Han Soo-young dazedly approached the window. The light grew brighter beyond the pale naked skis, and the stars were receding away. Everything has already been written, and at the same time still being written. The outer God, who sent her to the 1863rd turn, said that to her. A universe of repeating cycle. And in this universe, the result birthed the cause, and the cause would eventually become the result. In order to create a complete story, the result rejected the cause, while the cause devoured the result in order to exist. The moment she understood that vast, mysterious rule, Han Soo-young began thinking that this world resembled a chessboard that pursued the highest degree of completion, ruled by a certain gigantic will, with an unknown origin and form. Even if she was the creator of the apocalyptic scenario, wasn't she merely another chess piece, a knight in this chessboard of the universe? While sensing the waves of sleepiness crashing in, she slowly got up from her seat. Your mental power has reached its limit. Han Soo-young fought against the horrifying level of tiredness, fumbled around to put on some clothes, and left her room. The hour was still very early, but the people waking up early should be getting ready to go to work roundabout now. The Dakibai king was following after her. She addressed the king while not even bothering to look back. You worked hard trying to edit the novel until now. If you go outside, you'll die. She already knew that, because the sun was rising. Han Soo-young looked up at the break of dawn and spoke. My role's already finished anyway. You'll take care of the rest from now on, right? It'll be the end when you hand over the text file to him on the designated time. I wrote that revised version too, the one we talked about, just in case. But that's incomplete, so you decide what to do later. But it's been over 10 years. Han Soo-young glared at the Dakibai king several handspans taller than her. Can I do what I want at least once? The reason why she came to this world. It was to meet Kim Dakya. She ran into back in the 1863rd turn one more time. She leisurely warmed her muscles and started jogging. Han Soo-young imagined Kim Dakya on his way to work at Minosoft. She heard news from the Dakibai king every now and then, and there were also the comments Kim Dakya himself had written. And that's how she knew a lot about him. Authornim, I'll be living by myself starting this year. I'm now living near this place, and it's really weird reading about it in a novel. Have you heard about Minosoft? It'd be nice if your novel gets a game version too. Maybe I should suggest it to the... She knew when he became independent from his tragedy, and from where he started dealing with yet another tragedy, and also in what shape or form this new tragedy appeared as. The main body's ego is trying to wake up from her dream. Warning, your self-regulated activity period has ended. Further exercising of control will cause your ego to. Han Soo-young ignored the messages and continued to run. She ran and ran again until she could barely breathe. She ran hard. The words Kim Dakya wrote the only things occupying her thoughts. Authornim, I don't remember how many times I've said this before, but those words, she'd forget them all. Your actions are in serious violation of the probability. She'd forget the memories of the 1863rd turn. And she'd also forget the fact that she wrote a certain novel as well. Your fable is disappearing. She'd forget that a story existed just for its sole reader. However, even then, even if she forgot everything, Han Soo-young's running slowly came to a halt. There he was, a man who existed only as text for a long, long time ever since that day she last saw him in the hospital's emergency ward. In the distance, Kim Dak-ya was walking forward. That was the exact same face of Kim Dak-ya she remembered. The man who came to her 1863rd regression turn. The man who she wanted to see again. The detestable man with his own brand of ass-kissing. The man who lied really easily. The man who she enjoyed being around, since they could lie about something together and snicker among themselves. The man who didn't remember her. Her voice didn't want to come out. She couldn't tell whether it was because she was choking up or the control of her body was slipping away from her. Han Soo-young staggered and walked closer to Kim Dak-ya. Several passers-by brushing past her looked back in suspicion. Kim Dak-ya was now walking down the subway steps. Kim Dak-ya, with earphones stuck in his ears and reading something on his phone while walking downstairs. She knew what he was currently reading. She barely managed to shout, but her voice still didn't come out, so she desperately chased after him. Because of the story you wrote, author-nim, I was able to survive until now. Han Soo-young was also able to survive while reading the soul reader's words. She managed to write the next part of Yoo Young-hyuk's life through them. She was able to endure her boring and stuffy teen years, the days she never wanted to go back to, thanks to those words. This train is bound for. She spotted Kim Dak-ya standing on the platform, waiting for the next train to arrive. A person hiding within the small world crafted out of letters to protect himself was standing right there. Kim Dak-ya, who didn't know anything about the apocalypse about to happen. Kim Dak-ya, who'd get to live on the expansive world of the ways of survival. Kim Dak-ya, who'd get to meet the protagonist he so longed to become. Kim Dak-ya, who'd become the demon king of salvation. Kim Dak-ya, who'd sacrifice himself multiple times for the sake of his companions, and as a result, came to the 1863rd turn and met her. Kim Dak-ya, who was destined to become the most ancient dream, the price he paid for loving a certain story too much. Your mental state is crumbling. The main body's ego is regaining its control. Your fable is being extinguished. Her legs grew heavy, and her arms didn't want to move anymore. Her body was gradually becoming not hers. Even then, Han Soo-young wanted to tell him. To tell him that he was definitely not at fault for this story being born, and to tell him that the things he was about to experience were not his sins. Because her past 13 years existed solely to say those words to him. To say that, though you have grown up while reading this story, there's no need for you to become it. She barely managed to reach out, the tips of her hand touching Kim Dak-ya's shoulder. Your ego will convert into the subconsciousness. Kim Dak-ya felt that sensation of touch on his shoulder and looked behind him. However, the incoming waves of commuters heading to work swept him up, and he got pushed into the subway instead. And after the crowd had left, only Han Soo-young and her dazed expression remained on the empty subway platform. What the hell? Why the hell am I standing here? Han Soo-young tilted her head before scratching her hair hard while wondering out loud, did my sleepwalking flare up again? She confirmed the time with her smartphone and exploded in irritation. Son of a, and I haven't even finished writing today's chapter 2. Fable, predictive plagiarism, has plagiarized your lost memories. Tsu-cha-cha-cha-chu. Han Soo-young. Tsu-cha-chu. Han Soo-young. She heard someone call out to her among all the terrible ringing in her ears. Han Soo-young. And right next instant, a powerful impact landing on the back of her head helped her to regain her wits. The pain emanating from the back of the head was hellish. She already knew which fool would hit her so mercilessly like this. Jung-hyuk SSI, what are you doing hitting her so hard like that? You could have killed her right as she's waking up. Han Soo-young slowly raised her head and discovered Yi Seol-hwa supporting her, as well as Yu Jung-hyuk and his massive scowl. Also, the other members of Kim Dak-ya Company, too. Jiang Hui-won, Yi Hyun-seong, Shin Yu-seung, Yi Jae-hai companions, currently covered in dust from head to toe. Han Soo-young intently stared at them as if to study each and every one present. Eventually, her gaze shifted over to Yu Jung-hyuk. I think I now know how you felt back when you finally recalled the 0th turn. What rubbish are you talking about now? I remember. Han Soo-young looked around here and there as if it still didn't feel real to her yet. Then, she slowly looked behind her. That's where the field covered in dense fog created out of letters could be seen. That was the gateway they passed through just now, and also the hurdle where she nearly died as well. Yi Jae-hai, checking out Han Soo-young's complexion, asked, Eoni, are you really all right? You were mumbling some incoherent stuff about going somewhere to sign a contract for a novel and stuff. Fable predictive plagiarism has stopped its storytelling. Han Soo-young looked down at her own trembling hands. Why did these memories return to her only now? No, hold on, were they even real to begin with? Once upon a time, she wrote a certain story with these very hands. Faint memories that were still overflowing with vividness. Han Soo-young organized her thoughts in a sequential manner. Why she was here, what had happened so far, and what she needed to say now. I'm the ways of survivals. Han Soo-young barely managed to breathe in a couple of times, and just as she was about to open her mouth again, Yu Jung-hyuk abruptly cut her off. Stop wasting time with unnecessary remarks and let's head out. She raised her head after hearing those words. Main scenario has been updated. Final scenario will now commence. Even as she stared at the scenario messages unfolding before her very eyes, everything still didn't feel real to her. But she knew why those messages were floating around in her vision, though. The companions had broken past the 99 scenarios once more. Why are you acting so dazed like this? This was the tragedy that she set in motion, and the very people who faced this tragedy head-on were extending their hands towards her. Let's go, Soo-young SSI. Yu Sang-ah lightly tapped Han Soo-young's back and took the lead. The backs of her companions walking ahead of her were murky, cloudy. This was impossible. This was not something you could pull off because of your desire to save someone else. Even then, they still did it. In the far-off distance, the wall of letters covering up the end of the world could be seen. The final wall. The companions exchanged knowing glances and began pulling out their weapons one by one, and simultaneously, the roars of the constellations came from afar. Yu Jung-hyuk, watching this scene unfold, also unsheathed his dark heavenly demon sword. That fool is beyond that wall. The Dakibus from the bureau were blocking their path, and the Dakibai King's figure could be seen guarding the final wall itself. Han Soo-young slowly sucked in her breaths and got up from her spot. It truly had been a lengthy story, and finally its ending was right before her eyes. They have finally reached the conclusion she had written. Epilogue 3, Author's Words 4, Fin. Chapter 536, Epilogue 4, The Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint 1. I remembered the first time I read that novel. A really stuffy, boring hospital's ward, a single PC located in its lobby. When I stood in line to have a go at it, a gentleman wearing a fedora stepped aside for me. The computer screen at the time was showing the web novel platform that enjoyed visiting. I dazedly stared at the screen before inputting the keywords. I might have inserted 3 or so words, but couldn't quite remember what I typed back then. However, I still remembered what I was thinking of back then. The mechanical pencil leads strewn about on the classroom floor, the indigo-hued skis extending far beyond outside the windows. What I could tell for sure was that my hands, used to open the classroom window, had typed something, and that led me to discover that novel. 3 Ways to Survive in a Ruined World. Through that story I survived. He was definitely not at fault for this story being born. I felt sick inside. I couldn't fight against the dizziness and collapsed on the floor. The texts before my eyes were blurry and hard to see. Han Soo-young was TLS 123. While panting heavily, I lay unmoving on the floor for a long time. Only the same exact question continued to swirl around in my head, the question of, but why? Why for someone like me? I remained collapsed for a while. I thought I cried, too. However, no matter how I thrashed and screamed and sobbed, the already written sentences couldn't be changed. Han Soo-young had to spend 13 years of life just for me and helped me live by crafting sentences literally carved out of her. And then she was extinguished. Kim Dak-yao. The fourth wall was calling out to me. I quietly listened to the next words. Why you show old R.E.A.D. I gingerly stood back up. My reflection on the windows was a complete mess. It'd be hard to call my body an adult's anymore. My height had decreased a lot, and my face had gotten younger too. The coat I wore no longer fit me. I stared at that face for a long time before taking the coat off for good. How many years has it been? Your ths tmhs no me ening hire. I understood what that meant. This subway was the location where the most ancient dream had his dreams. So the time of other world lines couldn't measure the time flowing within this train. In all honesty, I had completely lost all sense of time after entering this train anyway. Even then, there should still be this thing called perceived time, right? Around 21,763, YEARS. It's not as long as I thought. I'm still way younger than the secretive plotter, right? Sanilla li ttli are unti. I heard the fourth wall cackle away. If it wasn't for this guy's presence here, I'd have gone insane a long time ago. Along with the pasuzusu noise, the tip of my pinky decreased a little. Since when did this start from, I wondered. I didn't do anything, yet my body continued to grow smaller. Well, if I were to be more specific, it wasn't really. I didn't do anything, though. Will I keep getting smaller? I stared at the crumbs of fables drifting away outside the windows and asked, where are those fables going off to anyway? To Universias subconsciousness. And where is that? In a where eldly niwai o you aren't conscious of. The role of the most ancient dream was to imagine all of the world lines. Even if I wasn't conscious of it, my subconsciousness was still continuously watching the world lines. Those see fables YLL be reb orn as another Kim Dak-ya. As another Kim Dak-ya. Metaphor Ika Eli speaking its leaky that. I thought I could understand what the fourth wall was saying. Fables were streaming beyond the galaxies to head towards another world line. Those fables were, in essence, me. Just like the 49% version of me living along with my companions somewhere in the 1864th regression turn, my fragments could very well be reborn as Kim Dak-ya in a world line somewhere out there. If it's only that little, I think it'll be a bit of a push to call that guy Kim Dak-ya. I mean, he won't be the same as me with such a small fragment. YOUMJHTB an existence that might have a different name and face to me. Even then, that existence would come to life and start imagining the universe. He'd be moved after reading the story and then stare at the world line. And just like that, he'd maintain this universe. I see. Somehow, I thought I could understand the principle of this universe just a little. I pressed my crumbling fingers against the window. When I did, the rate of crumbling began accelerating. If you do that. This is my way of atoning for this story. Not just from my fingers, but the fables began scattering away little by little from the shoulders as well as my legs, too. The scattered fables would fly around in the universe and become sentences that go on to support this universe from somewhere. To say that, though you have grown up while reading this story, there's no need for you to become it. That's what the author of The Ways of Survival, Han Soo-young, said. I had clearly heard her. Even then, I couldn't heed her words. How could I make any other choice when looking at such a story? When I closed my eyes, the overview of the entire universe would get drawn inside my head. Han Soo-young wrote the story. Yu Young-hyuk lived that story. And I read that very story. And that's how this world barely managed to reach its completion. Dokyo SSI. Because this tragedy existed, I got to meet certain people. Someone was able to get saved, too. Kim Dokya stared into the universe with no visible end. And now I knew what my future was like. Every time I read something, I'd crumble away. My crumbling fables would scatter to countless world lines out there and become the gaze that maintained this universe. I would lose all of my memories and lose everything that I hold dear. And in the end, only the desire to see the next story would remain in me. But without that desire, this universe couldn't continue. This universe could only continue telling its story as long as someone was looking at it. Being stuck and unmoving in this universe meant death. Tsujajachu. The countless me, divided into particles, continued to spread out to the numerous world lines out there. The rate of the fable's scattering continued to hasten. If I forget about everything, I won't feel this pain anymore, right? Youo remember any thing after all. To someone who even lost the traces of his loss, no such thing as loss existed. While picking up the smartphone rolling around on the floor, I spoke up. Will I have enough time to read it one more time, I wonder? I opened the file for the ways of survival and scrolled up past the author's words that I had to read with great difficulty. 3 ways to survive in a ruined world. I started reading this novel from the very beginning. I read Yu Young-hyuk's third turn. Some stories I already knew, while some others felt brand new to me. The so-called final revised version was exactly the same as the original that I remembered. Kim Dokya didn't exist in it. Pasuzususu. Just as my fables scattered away, the sentences from the ways of survival filled me up inside. When I got tired, I closed my eyes for a little bit and rested, and after resting, I continued reading the novel. 5th turn 6th, 64th, 129th, 672nd, 914th, 1642nd. The page continued to scroll down, and I was overjoyed or saddened several times. Not being able to comment did bum me out. I wanted to let Han Soo-young know of my emotions one more time, to tell her that I could only come this far because of the story you gave me, that I loved your story more than anyone in this world. And so I read and then read some more. How long did I read this very story? Tsujachachu. By the time I reached the epilogue, my vision suddenly grew fuzzy. I even wondered if I became blind after reading a novel for far too long. A new update has been completed. But then my vision was slowly restored. What I saw weren't proper sentences, however. Sentences and paragraphs had become individual fragments. Words that were no longer in the form of a completed novel. Even then, I could still read them somehow. A world had been destroyed, and a brand new one was being born. My heart was beating loudly. A story I was intimately familiar with was there. I was the sole reader who knew the conclusion of this world. Within the story I existed, and I'm Yu Young-hyuk. It seems that I haven't introduced myself yet. My name is Han Soo-young. I'm the assistant to Cha Sang-jeong-nim in the group. And they were there too. What if the scenarios didn't start? What would have happened to us? Dokya SSI, your sponsor isn't something like the one-eyed fortune teller, right? Dokya SSI, have you thrown a hand grenade before? Ajasi, do you have any particular food you like? We broke past the scenarios together. Hyung, or you may be a god. Load the cannons. Everyone fight to your heart's content. I won't let anyone die. You stinking bastards. Again, you didn't even come to fetch me. The one I like isn't you, but the demon king of salvation. But, and I lived my life together with them. The next scenario is, we experienced trials and had to face off against life-threatening situations many times. We met constellations. We broke past seemingly impossible scenarios several times. And eventually, reached the end of the hellish scenarios. Your black is eternity. The companions returned to their everyday lives. Some people were rebuilding the destroyed PC bangs. They were putting up the torn posters of the computer games once more. In the world where the apocalypse had been overcome, people would search for other forms of entertainment once more. Yu Young-hyuk observed this spectacle and quietly clenched his right hand that hadn't held a mouse in a long while. Shin Yu-seung and Yi Gil-yong were enrolled into a temporary school. Not an elementary, not a secondary, nor was it a high school. No, it was, as the word implied, a temporary school. Shin Yu-seung was surprised to learn that such a place could exist in this world. Yi Jae-hai stared at the sight of the destroyed Tipung Girls' High for a long time, then started walking on the school's athletics field. She used to run on this very field with her friends once upon a time. She quietly stared at the worn-out track lines before cautiously assuming the starting posture. While reading the continuing stories of my companions, I wiped my eyes several times. This was the ending to this story. The companions were definitely living their lives in that place. They ate, they slept, they met with each other and talked. And I was there too. The 49% version of me. Kim Dak-ya, that had the memories of the companions, but didn't know anything about the ways of survival. And Kim Dak-ya read those sentences. But then, you, just who the hell are you? What was going on here? Speak, who the hell are you? It wasn't supposed to be like this. I'm sure of it, Kim Dak-ya is still in that place. But how? If you get a chance to run again, do you believe you can see it better the next time? Why? Su-cha-cha-cha-chu. The story was continuing on. The story that should have ended didn't end. More correctly, they chose to not end it. Stigma Group Regression LV1 is activating. I read that sentence half in despair. This shouldn't have happened. This sentence, it should never have been written. But the sentence uncaringly led to the next one. Remember this, we have only one opportunity. The companions, they were fighting again. The hellish scenarios were a place they shouldn't have gone back to, no matter what their reasons were. Even then, my companions returned to that place. Hey, shorty, you aren't going to flip a coin this time. It'll be the same whether I do or not, you know. What do you mean? Even if I flip it 100 times and it comes out only once, even if only 1% of Hyung remains in that place, I'll still go there to rescue him. Because that 1% is still Hyung. Then the scenario commenced, and in the midst of the banquet of coins exploding in the air, Dakibus of Star Stream were clearly freaking out. Within the explosive level of interest shown by the constellations, the companions were shouting out loudly. Hey, Abaddon, choose me. I'm gonna absolutely become hundreds of times stronger than that sooty bastard in the future. General Nim, are you there? I know you're looking at me right now. I don't need any sponsors, so please just give me coins instead. Black Flame Dragon, stop pestering me with messages while I'm still being civil, okay? I told you I won't choose you this time around. They had to be insane. Fufufu, you sure took your sweet time getting to Chungmuro. You think you can rescue that Baisili like this? As an aside, this whole area is now this great one's territory. Will you just shut up and hand over the flag, Gong Pildu? These people who lost their minds were clearing the scenario with insane methods. Dangerous moments came in their direction many times, but the companions never yielded once. Incarnation, Yi Jae-hai is activating Stigma, Transmission LV1. You stinking sooty bastard. This is why only you got stronger by using crap like this. The transmission. The regressor-specific skill that allowed one to strongly ruminate over the memories from the previous life and let one regain their past skills. Uriel Great Sage, Abyssal Black Flame Dragon. And with the aid from the constellations added in, the companions got to clear the scenario at a considerable pace. It truly was an amazing marching speed. We can clear this with avatars, no one has to die. However, it wasn't as if they emerged as unopposed victors every single time. Conquering King, My apologies, but you need to die here. Some of the people they regressed with turned out to be traitors. Had you regained your original strength, all three of us combined wouldn't even be a match to you, but as it is now, it's a different story. I bit down on my lip. These people joined the regression journey while harboring impure motivation from the very beginning. And to make matters worse, they aimed for the early part of the scenarios when Yu Young-hyuk was with Yu Mia. They probably thought that he'd be at his weakest around this point in time. However, that was a miscalculation. What? My aya. Almost at the same time Yu Young-hyuk spoke up. A lengthy sword emerged from Yu Mia's mouth. The dark heavenly demon sword. The highest grade item that could only be acquired around the middle stages of the scenarios was now firmly gripped in Yu Young-hyuk's hand. Chills ran down my skin. I had no idea that Yu Mia inventory could be used in that fashion. While emitting truly incredible killing intent, Yu Young-hyuk coldly declared. Die. Sentences continued on sporadically after that. The Demon King of Salvation during this turn is me. What the hell, we agreed that I'll be the one. That modifier is mine, Nuna. The companions didn't concede an inch to anyone, and majority of the constellations are barring their animosity towards Kim Dakya companies, incarnations. And they didn't compromise once with anyone, either. The Kim Dakya company continued to clear the scenarios in a pace not too slow, but not too fast either. Certain scenes were dealt with using simple descriptions, while some others were completely omitted. The later they got in the scenarios, the worse the segmentation of each scenes became. It was as if the rough sketches of ideas had been left behind there instead. Companions who were at the 20th scenario were suddenly in the 15th, then they could be found in the 35th next. However, there was no doubt that the companions were there, and I could imagine them. They ran on the blank margins. They were running on the scenario's field of snow, and they were advancing forward one sentence at a time. They were gradually getting closer to me. While looking at them, I repeated the cycle of crying and sleeping. The fuzzier my consciousness became, the stronger my desire grew. Even though I knew that I shouldn't think this way, I couldn't stop myself. I want to read this story for a little bit longer. Just like that, I read the disconnected sentences and then read the one after that. And I imagined what might be between those sentences, as if I was groping around in the dark. The viewpoint that the author couldn't control, and one that no reader could predict. And within this space between the lines not addressed by any sentences, the companions continued to complete the scenarios little by little. Inside this space between the lines where no one could intrude upon their lives, they remained as gods of this story. While reading their story, I blacked out several times. My reading speed got worse and worse, and my fable was disappearing bit by bit as well. Meanwhile, the sentences of my companions continued to diligently pile up, to the 98th scenario and then to the 99th once more. Sentences written by their own lives were accurately being compiled one by one, and eventually, they have finally reached the conclusion she had written. The very last sentence arrived at my doorstep. That was the end of the ways of survival, a story seemingly abandoned in the middle of being written, a story that didn't get completed because of that reason. From beyond the very last sentence of the story, a certain noise came to me, a noise that sounded like someone calling out to someone else, or perhaps the noise of someone knocking on the door. The smartphone went off with a tab. Noise and its pitch-black screen reflected my face, now that of a child. I was crying. Kim Dakya slowly raised his head. I felt the faint vibration of the subway. Since when did it start? Thud. Someone was pounding on the rear door of the train's cabin. Epilogue 4. The Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint 1 Fin. Chapter 537. Epilogue 4. The Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint 2. Run, we only have to go a little bit further. Han Soo-young, along with her companions, broke through the waves of the constellations. The ark scattered debris as it was destroyed, and revealed the final wall in its full glory in the distance. The grace of a great fable was enveloping the companions as if to protect them. Great fable, one who rebels against fate, has begun its storytelling. It was a new great fable they got to earn during this regression turn. Without it, they would have died many times over. They could see the figures of constellations marching towards them from the distance. Like enraged wild beasts, myth-grade constellations from Vedas and Papyrus were rushing in their direction. Unlike their previous regression turn, they didn't have outer gods supporting them this time. Their combat force was in an overwhelmingly disadvantageous situation. The only reason why they weren't pushed back even then was because the strongest ever group in existence made out of regressors was lending them support. The ones taking on the front lines were the Chinese and Indian incarnations. When China's Fei Hu gave his signal, incarnations from his own force, AQ, yanked out their weapons simultaneously. As if he couldn't possibly lose here, India's Ranveer Khan also joined the fray. The incarnations from Trimurti, following after him, pulled out their own spears too and caused the sand storm to violently rage on. Then Justice, led by Selina Kim, and Solzhenitsyn, led by Iris, who tagged along with her, took on both sides of the flanks. Even then, their battle situation remained disadvantageous. "Go on ahead, I shall take care of this place. If you fail to rescue my disciple, then consider your lives forfeit." Kiegios and the Breaking the Sky Saint, they too were part of the 100-strong regressors. Weapons of these two swept across the battlefield, and the Transcenders from Murim supported their rear and followed after the duo. Quiet. Both Kiegios and the Breaking the Sky Saint had grown even stronger than before through the regression. As if they were in competition against each other, their sword strikes raucously shook the entire battlefield. The screams of the constellations being torn apart by the silver-hued storm reverberated throughout the land. The wall needed to be opened while they were buying a little bit of time. This wall had been opened once before. Han Suyong looked up at the massive wall they had finally succeeded in reaching and spoke up. "Jang Haiyong." "Yes, ma'am." As if she was waiting for it, Jang Haiyong extended her hand. She was now the full-fledged king of Transcenders, after going through the scenarios one more time. The wall of impossible communication has discovered its intended position. The final wall began vibrating as if it was reacting to their great fable. Yu Sangha. Yu Sangha nodded her head and stepped forward. The wall that decides samsara has discovered its intended position. I see. You have journeyed this lengthy cycle of time and eventually made your way back here, my Arhat. The fable of Sakyamuni quietly entered their ears. Sakyamuni of this world line easily accepted Yu Sangha's existence. He had already repeated many cycles of samsara, allowing him to gain an understanding of this universe's rules. Jiang Huiwan Yigilyong. The wall that divides the good and evil they received from Metatron and Agars. Jiang Huiwan reached out first and placed her hand on the final wall. "Have you really come here, after witnessing what's beyond that wall?" Metatron of this world line was deeply astonished by the companion's existence. He accepted the eventual destruction of Eden and admitted that that result couldn't be changed. However, he made a slightly different decision during this regression turn. The proof of that was the Eden's archangels currently aiding the incarnations. However, it wasn't only him who made a bizarre choice. "How amusing. You dare to ask me, a demon king, to hand over the wall to you." The demon kings and the angels who fought against each other with murderous intensity back in the great war of saints and demons stood as their allies this time. It was a choice based on their desire to survive, but nevertheless, it proved to be a great help to Kim Dokya Company. The wall that divides the good and evil has discovered its intended position. A great number of constellations are unleashing their status towards Kim Dokya Company. Of course, it wasn't as if every constellation out there became their allies. The absolute majority of Starstream still remained as their enemies, and those constellations who chose to help were minuscule in number. Even then, the companions got this far safely. Although deep scars remained in various parts of their bodies, not a single one was lost along the way. This was only because no one got greedy, and the end goal was the same for everyone. Han Suyong looked at Yeonseong the last. The burly man's back was carrying the pale-faced Kim Dokya. More specifically, not Kim Dokya but an avatar he left behind. She looked at him and spoke, "Help us, Kim Dokya." However, this man was also definitely Kim Dokya. Just like how the 1863rd turns Han Suyong was definitely Han Suyong. The other me might not want this to happen. This story, it has ended back then. Kim Dokya stammered. He had come to accept that he was Kim Dokya's avatar by now. Han Suyong quietly stared at him before saying this. "Why don't we ask that after meeting the other you?" That brought a sad little smile on Kim Dokya's lips. He looked at Han Suyong, then looked at the faces of the companions one by one. "If this is the story you wanted." His pale hand then touched the final wall. The last fragment of the final wall was the fourth wall, and as he was Kim Dokya's avatar, he too held a part of that key. Tsuchachachachu. As if this world wasn't acknowledging his existence, Kim Dokya's body began shaking unsteadily. And soon after that, a portion of the wall opened up along with loud splitting noises. Kim Dokya shaking around as if he was getting electrocuted, blacked out instantly. Yi Hyun-seong continued to carry him on the back. Yu Young-hyuk, dusting the blade of his dark heavenly demon sword, spoke up, "Forward, at top speed." Along with his signal, the companions began running forward. "Everyone stay strong, only a little bit more to go. We still have enough life and death pills left, so even if you're only slightly injured, please tell me right away." The voices of the companions were encouraging each other. Han Suyong ran while listening to them. A bright white field of snow stretched before her eyes. Letters piling up like snow could be seen here and there on this field. She stepped on those letters and leapt up. Did the 1863rd turns her write this story in the revised version? Did she think about Kim Dokya's story and the epilogue to come after? She couldn't tell. No matter what she tried, she simply couldn't remember that portion. It was then something fell and settled on her eyelashes. She reflexively wiped it away, only for snowflake-like things to stain her hand. "This girl, you told me that you were a penniless book lover, didn't you?" The white snowflakes of letters were scattering in the air. Sentences that definitely existed there, but couldn't be seen because how pure white their color was. Han Suyong. Han Suyong dazedly stared at that sentence, falling into her hand. "Your story, it." This was Kim Dokya's sentence. Not just anyone, but Kim Dokya himself had written this earnest impression. She gripped the sentence tightly. Just like the starlight being pushed away by the breaking of dawn, the sentences crumbled away within her hand. "Don't worry, I will read it, even if it's over 3,000 chapters." These sentences, they were something she so desperately wanted to have. Unfortunately, they weren't hers. Memories were rushing in, emotions that her other self had experienced. Han Suyong could vividly feel them even now. The resentment that didn't know which way to go was spreading within her mind. Beyond this field of snow was where Kim Dokya could be found. Kim Dokya, who made Kim Dokya who he was. Kim Dokya, who remembered the ways of survival. Kim Dokya, who chose the memories of the book he had written over the memories of happier days. Godamit. The novel that was written by her, who was also not her. That very novel saved Kim Dokya, and also at the same time, it doomed him. And she now needed to take responsibility for the conclusion to the tragedy her other self had created. It was around then that a faint flicker of light revealed itself from afar. Kugagagugu. She saw something busy rushing forward beyond this vast field of snow. The companions looked at each other all at once. Not a single person here didn't know what that thing was. It was the subway. Chimera Dragon. The Chimera Dragon loudly howled out as it got summoned, and took flight after the companions got on its back. The creature scythed through the air and reached the rear of the subway in an instant. Only a little bit remained now. As long as they could bridge this gap, they... Jaya. Suddenly, the chimera dragon screamed and lost its balance. The stunned Shin Yuseung quickly took a look behind only to discover some things were biting onto the dragon's tail. Rar. Large wild dogs resembling pitch-black shadows began biting into the dragon's tail and its wings. These creatures were appearing from a portal opening up in the air. The chimera dragon's torn-off flesh got scattered away within the white snowfield. Hounds chasing after the abyss. They had seen these creatures before. These hounds from another dimension attacked the secretive plotter and the characters from the 999th turn. They were terrifying monsters that supposedly hunted down the wanderers of the world lines that violated the probability. But why were these hounds attacking them now? Yu Yonghyuk gasped and spoke. It seems that they judged the group regression to be a danger to the world line. God admits, the number of the hounds rushing outside the portal increased exponentially. They even saw hounds with massive physiques, too. This level of attacking force was truly unprecedented, and accompanied by the loud howl that reverberated throughout the snowfield, the hounds kicked the air and pounced on them simultaneously. The moment the black clouds of hounds landed on the companions, the heavens seemed to shatter along with the loud rumble. The golden-colored lightning crashed down, and hounds were viciously cast away. Yu Sangha was the first to figure out who was behind the attack. Great Sage. The golden rims were glowing gloriously. The master of the Rui Jingu Bang was grinning confidently. Leave this to me. Constellation, prisoner of the golden headband, is unleashing his status. It wasn't just the Great Sage alone. Some had followed the companions into the passageway of the final wall, left wide open. This is my opportunity to show everyone what will happen if this Great One uses both of his hands. Constellation, abyssal black flame dragon, has removed all the seals on himself. The noble flames of an archangel were added to the mix and burned away at the hounds. I may not be as strong as the 999th turns me, but there's no problem buying you more time. Constellation, demon-like judge of fire, is rousing up the flames of hell. The flames of hellfire brilliantly danced upwards as pure white wings spread out. With a faint smile, Uriel spoke. I'll leave Kim Dakya in your hands, Huiwana. Using that fleeting opening the constellations had created, the chimera dragon finally managed to bite onto the rear of the subway. However, the vehicle's hardy exterior didn't break even when the dragon's fangs clamped down on it. Master with me. Yijai, holding swords in both of her hands, kicked off the dragon's back and leapt up. Two swords were held in her grip, the twin dragon sword of the maritime war god, and the invincible warrior's sword from the Goryeo's #1 swordsman. Constellation, Goryeo's first swordsman, is bestowing his blessing. Constellation, maritime war god, is cheering on his incarnation. The fourth law. Fourth sword that beheads the emptiness. It was the skill Chiak Junjeong used while fighting against the indescribable distance. Although still incomplete, Yijai could use this sword strike to some degree now. This miracle only came about due to the hellish training she went through in the Isle of Reincarnators, as well as her stunning innate talent. Quack. The subway's exterior that withstood a dragon's fangs began to bend bit by bit from her continuous sword strikes. Not missing that opening, Yu Yonghyuk's dark heavenly demon sword also made a move. The breaking the sky swordsmanship. Secret technique, inner mystery transmission. Shooting star slash. The trajectory of destruction, the dark heavenly demon sword, Drew slammed into the rear of the subway. Once the choking dust cleared out of their view, a small hole had appeared on the train's rear. It's done, everyone get in. The companions rapidly infiltrated the subway's interior, more correctly, with the exception of two people. Yu Yonghyuk behind you. Rar. The hounds that the constellations failed to block were flooding in from behind them. Yu Young-hyuk unleashed all of his strength as a transcender to face them head-on. He shouted out while smacking the hounds away with the storm-like barrage of sword strikes. "Go on ahead, I shall catch up to you soon." Han Soo-young bit her lip. It wasn't just anyone but Yu Young-hyuk, the strongest among their group. As he was a man who could fight evenly against a myth-grade constellation, he wouldn't get done in by the hounds of the abyss that easily. "Don't get killed, okay?" Han Soo-young left those words behind and hurriedly entered the subway's interior. It was as exactly the same as the interior of the third-line train they all remembered. It was none other than that very same train where they left Kim Dok-ya behind. Han Soo-young quickly checked for the train cabin's information. Along with the tsu-cha-chut noise, the cabin's number floated up. She reflexively shouted out, "Kim Dok-ya is in the cabin number 3807. Everyone get to the front." This was a similar situation to back when they earned the great fable, Demon World Spring. It seemed that the rest of the companions also realized this. "This does resemble that time when we fought against Surya. I shall pry open the door in front of us." Yi Hyun-seong quickly rushed forward, and while expanding every muscle on his body, he let out a mighty shout. "Hap!" The great mountain push that had exceeded the skill proficiency was activated, and the thick subway's door creaked loudly while being pushed open. Great fable, Demon World Spring, has begun its storytelling. Stage transformation has been triggered. This great fable could only be completed because everyone worked together, and the blessing of this fable was now aiding them. When Yi Hyun-seong couldn't open a door, Yu Sang-ah found the button to operate it, and when a door even she couldn't do anything about appeared, Yi Gil-yong summoned his insects and wore out the internal parts to make way. And so they continued to open one, open two, and then opened yet another door. As the number of doors they managed to open grew higher, the expressions of the companions were gradually getting heated up too. Kim Dok-ya was definitely beyond there. Everyone in the group could feel it. The pitch-black door before them, it had to be the final door. It's impossible with my stigma. Unfortunately, this door didn't want to open unlike before. I can't find the button either. Even the bugs say they can't figure out its structure. Should I use my skill to break it?" They resorted to Yi Jai-hai's sword strikes as well as Yi Hyun-seong's great mountain destruction, but the door didn't budge an inch. The companions could only look at each other. How come only this door refused to open up? It was then that Yu Sang-ah opened her mouth. "Everyone, wait. I think this door is the same as the one Yu Young-hyuk SSI broke back in the past." Yu Young-hyuk did that. Yes, back in the third regression turn, Young-hyuk SSI broke this door and entered. Han Soo-young reflexively looked behind her, but Yu Young-hyuk didn't come with them. He was probably still fighting against the hounds chasing after the abyss, even now at the rear of the train. It was right then that Shin Yu-seung cried out, "Hounds are here." Even before they had realized it, the hounds were already trying to sneak in through the gaps they had destroyed. Han Soo-young's mind began racing. What happened to Yu Young-hyuk? Could it be that he got? "Block the rear. Iani, hurry up." There was no more time to think. Yi Hyun-seong ran forward like a true tanker and started enduring against the hound's fangs by entering steel transformation, while Yi Jai-hai and Jeong Hui-won unsheathed their swords to smack away the creatures. Jang Hyong shouted out, "Han Soo-young, do something." Han Soo-young approached the black door. When she placed her hand on it, faint sparks began exploding. She slowly closed her eyes. All of the sentences were, in actual reality, written by her hands. Even if that was the other Han Soo-young, that version was still undoubtedly Han Soo-young. So this hand should be able to open this door too. Su-ja-ja-ja-cha-chu. As if she was now rewriting the sentences, Han Soo-young started messing with the wall's fable. "I'm Yu Young-hyuk." The regressor Yu Young-hyuk was her creation. That was why she should be able to open this door as well. Unfortunately, Han Soo-young did know. Su-ja-ja-jut. A story that had already left the author's hands was no longer under its creator's control. The universe of the ways of survival flooded into Han Soo-young's head. The things she did right, and those she didn't. Stories that she imagined and those she couldn't even have, crashed and churned in opposite directions inside her mind all at the same time. Kyuka. Blood trickled out from her eyes and mouth. The blood flow reversed, causing her blood to pour out onto the subway's floor. As her vision was dyed in crimson, Han Soo-young turned to look back at her companions. They were gradually spreading apart while fighting, and their running footsteps imprinted on the subway's corridor remained there like fables. You don't have the overright authority. An already completed world was right before her eyes. The voices of her companions calling out to her seemed so distant. The world where the result devours the cause, and the cause devours the result. The world where all possibilities exist, and the individual possibility supports and maintains each other. A perfect, immortal epic where a story manufactures a story all on its own. She looked back, and the space before her began distorting along with a shower of sparks. The subway's four-sided door slowly started spinning and drew a circle. The door, now spinning viciously, became a pitch-black circle. A perfect, complete circle that didn't permit any and all types of external intrusions. She tottered and reached out to this circle, but Han Soo-young couldn't even touch it. This circle now resembled a single full stop. A full stop announcing that the story was truly complete, just like this. TLS 123. And this full stop was now addressing her. Youyuka Inanachungth is Storai. Epilogue 4, Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint 2 Fin. Chapter 538. Epilogue 4, The Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint 3. The sentence floated up to the air. When she heard the voice that utterly ignored spelling rules or word spacing, Han Soo-young grew deeply flustered. Why you are? She did hear some things about this voice from Kim Dok-ya in the past. Right, that guy can also speak. A skill can talk. Well, I admit it kinda talks in a funny way, but you can still more or less understand it. She had no idea that one day she'd get to hear that voice herself. The fourth wall. When called out, the spinning circle began to cackle. Youyuka in an Otpa SS Hire the Great One do is ent wa and tiet. The Great One. She had heard of that title somewhere before. Su-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha. The probability sparks wildly exploded, and the companions all screamed out. The vicious storm of aftermath even managed to blow away the hounds chasing after the abyss outside the subway. The final wall is not permitting your group's entry. Your group does not have the qualifications to meet the most ancient dream. The pain akin to their bodies being shredded apart into tiny bits slammed into them. This was no doubt a ploy to push the companions outside the subway. His if I now stop. One of Han Soo-young's knees was bent in an abnormal direction. However, she didn't even scream once and simply glared at the pitch-black circle right before her eyes. I'll decide when and where I get off. The 1865th turn's Han Soo-young didn't select the abyssal black flame. An unbelievable level of forceful aura flooded out from her entire figure. Han Soo-young became a constellation on her own. Constellation, architect of the false last act, is revealing her status. It was the same modifier that the 1863rd turn's Han Soo-young had acquired. She unleashed every bit of fable she had been saving up until now. Brilliantly pure blue rays of light swirled violently from one of her irises. Exclusive skill, Eye of Truth, has been activated. Back during the 1863rd turn, this skill failed to penetrate past that wall. However, Han Soo-young of this regression turn was a different being altogether. Fable Revision Specialist has begun its storytelling. In this turn, she had been diligently acquiring a lot more fables related to writing than before. Su-cha-cha-cha-chu. Just like how the foundations of other characters were a collection of sentences, it should be the same story for the fourth wall, as well. As long as this world was a novel, this wall must have been made up of words and sentences. Even if she failed to decipher its foundation, there should still be sentences left behind somewhere that helped her make a guess. The fourth wall cottoned on to what Han Soo-young was planning to do and ballooned up its overall thickness. USLSS. The fourth wall is increasing its thickness even more. The spinning black circle grew even more robust. The fourth wall, the mind defense skill that couldn't be penetrated by the existences found within the ways of survival. Han Soo-young didn't try to forcibly penetrate the wall. Instead, she quietly stared at it. Fable Guide of the Line Spacing has begun its storytelling. Some things would grow even more obvious the more you try to hide them. Han Soo-young scanned the outer appearance of the wall. There were plenty of scratches and cracks visible on it. Its past history of not sparing itself when trying to protect Kim Dok-ya was left behind as fully visible traces all over the wall. That great one must be protected. Why did this wall hide that sentence in the most secretive place of all? That is the last favor the god asked of me. In that very moment, Han Soo-young's lips began trembling. As pulsing migraine assaulted her, sentences above the wall flashed past her brain. Hey. Yes. If by chance something happens to me, then you. Please don't say things like that. If you really see me as your god, then. A middle-aged man wearing a fedora was looking up at her with a committed, loyal look on his face. Protect that guy no matter what. The existence that knew the ways of survival, just as well as the original author herself. The existence that remained even more indifferent to the tragedies of this world than her, and the existence that lived for the sole purpose of completing the story. The existence that opened the scenario in this world, and the one who connected the two world lines as one. The fourth wall spoke up instead of Han Soo-young's trembling lips. Dion TB so surprised, even I realize it juicent now. What did you say? I also didn't kn out who I was. There were some existences without a fleshed-out past that had to simply exist, until belatedly they were permitted to acquire their histories. Beings that did exist, until the author decided to give them a backstory. I become a complete TB of YOU. The scenes from the moments when the paid service got underway brushed past her mind. The moment when the two world lines of reality and fiction became one, and the 1863rd turns Daki by King standing right in the middle. WHYI Hadi Tebecom, a WLLD vid, eing the Wo RLD. The Daki by King became the wall that divided the world. WHYI Hadi to protect T Kim Dok-ya. And then it carried out the last favor its god had asked of it. YOUDDN't remember me. The existence that repeated one single story for a long, long time, and the one who became addicted to that story, constantly lusting after it. The existence that had read the ways of survival, even before Kim Dok-ya did, was right before her eyes. This world's most ancient reader. I too didn't remember YOU. The Daki by King filled the void left behind by Han Soo-young and became this world's chronicler. T-Hyesan Orias N-O-W mine. And eventually, it succeeded in completing the story. It was I who asked you in the first place, so stop this right now. The existence that continued to uphold an order for a very long time had eventually become the order itself. YOU are not my god anymore. She who had lost her position as the original author was no longer the creator, as well. Han Soo-young stared at her own fingertips. The Ways of Survival her other self had written went on to become a novel spanning 149 chapters. That novel left her hands and reached its reader. You're right, this world's god is no longer me, but the reader. That would be Kim Dok-ya beyond this spinning circle, slumbering and dreaming away in eternity. So let's ask that god then. Let's ask if he really wishes to remain in this place or... Han Soo-young swallowed a life and death pill and righted her broken knee. And then, she walked forward step by step before extending her hands. Or, if he wants to get out of here with us. Blinding sparks of flames exploded on the tips of her hands. As if to reject her approach, the spinning circle's speed grew faster and faster. Blood splattered from both of her hands. Not even fables could protect her. However, even while suffering from the cruel pain akin to her hands being grounded into fine dust, Han Soo-young didn't stop. Kim Dok-ya, say something. There were some people who, despite wishing to be saved, couldn't bring themselves to ask others to save them. Han Soo-young always wanted to write certain sentences for people like that. To write sentences for those people who couldn't say or write anything. Just like how it always had been for her, all she could do was to write sentences. But as long as she could cross over to the other side of this circle, as long as she could get rid of this full stop, then. The idiot that unquestioningly took the lemon candy, offered as a joke and sucked on it. Kim Dok-ya. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough. She couldn't reach the other side of the wall with only the sentences she possessed. It was then, yet another hand was laid on top of Han Soo-young's. It was Yu Sang-ah. Mandalas were unfurled on both sides of her as she began loading her fable. While wiping away the blood trickling down her nose, she smiled weakly. Dok-ya SSI. The man who hid in the cabinet alone to read the ways of survival. Yu Sang-ah's sentences were now calling out to Kim Dok-ya. As if they were grabbing at a doorknob, their hands reached out and grabbed the spinning circle. However, the circle's speed didn't decrease in the slightest. They were still short on the sentences. But then, hands from two more people were laid on top of the two women's. I shall hold onto the inside. I'm on the left. Jiang Hui-won and Yi Hyun-seong, letting out a loud, spirited yell, began clinging onto the circle as well. The man who silently listened to the boring stories from the military. Yi Hyun-seong yelling out unleashed his fable, and Jiang Hui-won next to him matched his timing. Stinking stubborn mull of a damned troublemaker. Dok-ya SSI, answer us, you can hear us right. And now, Yiseal-hwa and Gong Pildu added their hands next. The man who searched for medicinal herbs throughout the night for the sake of his companions. The bastard who stole all of my lands. Ajasi. Hyung. The two kids also rushed in. The small hands of Shin Yu-seung and Yi Gil-yong were placed on Han Soo-young's one at a time. The man who always lied to reassure someone else. However, the man who wasn't very good at lying. Right behind them was Yi Jai-hai wielding her sword. She used her fists to slam into the circle. She hit it, then hit it again and again. I can't say something that cringy anyway, so just come out already. Squid Ajasi. Different memories of everyone from different time and place. All those sentences of every single moment gathered together and wished for one Kim Dok-ya. However, the full stop still didn't want to budge even after the companions called out. No, only their hands ended up as a bloody mess. Their fables were being extinguished now, and then a sentence floated up above the full stop. Maybe it's just our greed wanting to save him. Shut up. Maybe he's not in existence needing to be saved. The companions also knew it, knew that this action of theirs could be a meaningless one. That was why they wanted to know. To ask. To reach out and confirm. Kim Dok-ya, I know you're in there, Jang Ha-young shouted out. We talked about this, didn't we? Even if we can't reach each other, even if we can't meet, we gotta keep pounding on the wall until the end, right? Even if the wall would never open up, we agreed to keep writing something on it, didn't we? Even if we can't reach each other, even if we can't meet each other, we should continue to pound away on each other's walls. Even if that wall would never open up, keep writing something on that wall anyway. When we do that, then maybe, someone might end up seeing our words someday. Then maybe, just maybe, you might finally want to come out of that place. Please say something, anything, please. And so, Jang Ha-young's palm slammed into the full stop, and in the very next moment, wall of impossible communication is revealing its power. The full stop began to shake little by little. For the first time ever, the fourth wall's aura changed. Y-O-U-D-E-R-I. Yu Sang-ah didn't miss this opening and shouted out, Dok-ya SSI, we promised to meet during the next life, didn't we? Wall that decides samsara is revealing its capability. Yi-Gil-yong also shouted out as if he didn't want to lose. Hyung, you always think you are at fault for everything. Jiang Huiwan carried on where the boy's words ended. I don't care whether you're good or evil, Dakyo SSI. I don't plan on judging you according to the standards of this world. That's why. Wall that divides good and evil is revealing its theme. So please open this door. Right next moment, a powerful rebound coming out from the door blew away the companions. The cacophony of loud exploding noises utterly deafened them. Once the ringing in their ears went away, only the cold silence remained in the surroundings. The injured companions got up one by one. Before Yi Hyun-seong could say something, though, Han Soo-yong hurriedly placed a finger on her lips. Just like the way faint, soft drizzle moistened the parched ground, a quiet little noise could be heard. Knock. That noise, it was coming from beyond the full stop. A place beyond the completion of the story. Han Soo-yong was the first to hear that sound. Knock knock. The sound so small and so weak, yet still undoubtedly letting others know of his presence there. There he was. Shin Yuseung broke down in tears. Someone was knocking on the door from beyond it. Han Soo-yong rushed forward, followed right after by Yu Sang-a. Yi Hyun-seong and Jiang Huiwan laid their hands on top of the two women, again. Yi Hwa quickly healed the companions' wounded hands, while Gong Pil-du threw his own weight behind them. To fight against the rebound, Yi Jai-hai stabbed her sword on the floor, while Jang Ha-yong supported Han Soo-yong's body. Fables from Shin Yuseung and Yi-Gil-yong then began protecting Han Soo-yong's hands. Focus all of your powers in one spot. Along with the loud quagagagagag noise, their hands were grounded to bloody dust again. The full-stop spinning speed was slowing down. Bit by agonizing bit, the worn-down surface of the full stop began developing cracks. Their fable was not enough. The full stop size was gradually shrinking down. It continued to get smaller, as if to never permit their entry in this place. It was then some people suddenly intruded into the subway. Constellation, Queen of the Darkest Spring, is incarnating. They were two members of Kim Dokya Company, who had not revealed themselves up until now. My apologies for showing up late. One of them was the queen of the underworld, Persephone, and the other was Dokya. Rather than looking at the full stop, Yi Soo-jeong was now looking at the other Kim Dokya plopped down on the floor. He looked back at her in a daze, but then bit down hard on his lip and grabbed onto her hand. Fables then began flooding out from both Yi Soo-jeong and Persephone. Two Kim Dokjas existed for them. Kim Dokya before the start of the scenario, and Kim Dokya after the scenario got underway. Two beings that had observed Kim Dokya longer than anyone else supported his avatar and approached the full stop. Han Soo-yong nodded her head. The one who imprisoned Kim Dokya inside the wall was himself. Kim Dokya. Han Soo-yong realized something as she witnessed his eyelashes tremble weakly. No matter how deeply her novel had influenced Kim Dokya, he was not the ways of survival. No matter how well she understood the ways of survival, it didn't automatically mean she understood Kim Dokya. She might be able to write sentences for someone else, but she certainly couldn't read those words in their stead. No, the role of reading was left up to the god of the new world, the reader. Help us. Kim Dokya's hand touched the full stop. Tsu-cha-cha-cha-chu. The fourth wall is increasing its thickness even more. Hands were laid on top of hands. The fourth wall was shouting out at them. Yoyulat musint fa il h air. Ti hiasto riaches being completed th is way al riadai. Was it forbidden to change a complete story? Was it forbidden for a single universe to even dare think about being saved just because the rest of the universes were completed in unhappiness? Han Soo-yong wrapped Kim Dokya's hand, laid on top of hers tightly, and began crying. The memories from the 1863rd turn were going on a rampage. This story will cycle itself. Yet another Han Soo-yong would repeat the 1863rd turn inside this cycle. Kim Dak-ya and Han Soo-young wouldn't recognize each other and start fighting again. Yu Yong-hyuk would continue with his regressions. And to save them all, Kim Dak-ya would become the most ancient dream many, many times. The vast, indescribable time would cycle over and over again, leading them to reach and meet one another, only to part ways again. Enduring the innumerable lengths of time to meet, then meet again and create stories. And with that, this story might become truly complete. However, if that was the case, just when would they ever be able to taste happiness? It's fine if the story is imperfect. Han Soo-young's hands powerfully gripped onto the circle's crack. The surface of the gripped wall began tearing apart. If that story can make someone happy, then. The companions' fables crumbled as an incredible storm exploded. Kim Dak-ya's coat was ripped apart and their weapons shattered to bits and pieces. The blindingly pure rays of light blanketed their view. Within this incredible explosion of light, Han Soo-young thought to herself. The fourth wall was right. The ways of survival was indeed now over. With his own hands, he brought it to its conclusion. However, that didn't mean Kim Dak-ya's story had come to an end there, either. Kugugugugu. Eventually, the storm died down, revealing the messed-up hands of the companions. Hands laid on top of each other as if they had fused into one, and these hands had destroyed the completed full stop. The crack ran down on the circle's edge like a tear. It now resembled a comma. The door was open. Epilogue 4. The Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint 3 Fin. Chapter 539. Epilogue 4. The Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint 4. An explosion rang out on the field of snow. Yu Yong-hyuk swung the dark heavenly demon sword and smacked away the hounds chasing after the abyss, before climbing on the roof of the subway train. That explosion just now, it sounded suspicious. Did something happen inside the train? Damn it, there are just too many. The abyssal black flame dragon fighting off the hounds blew his top in anger. There didn't seem to be an end to these black hounds, rushing in at them from all sides. The great sage, continuously throwing down lightning bolts to scorch the hounds, could only mutter on in an exhausted voice. I don't want to admit this, but I'm still ways off from comparing against the people from 999th turn. Yet another explosion noise went off from inside the subway. Yu Yong-hyuk reflexively turned his head in that direction. What could those be? From the front car of the train, bits and pieces of what resembled fables began leaking out. It was also right then that some things were spat out of the hole on the train along with the loud kugugugu noise. Uriel freaked out and shouted at him. Yu Yong-hyuk, dodge it. Right next second, hounds being ejected from the train blanketed Yu Yong-hyuk like a black cloud. Pasuzu. Black bits scattered about. With the comma-shaped hole as the center, the door before their eyes was disappearing. Han Soo-young pushed herself off the floor and looked to the front. Letters were strewn about near the cabin door leading to the 3807 train car. I also. With you all. The moment she saw those words that couldn't yet become sentences, Han Soo-young realized just what knocked on the door from the other side. They were fables, very small fragments of Kim Dak-ya. Her eyes chased after the line of fallen fragments. The closer she got to the center of the cabin, the greater the number of fable fragments fallen on the floor. Kim Dak-ya was there. Kim Dak-ya's body, now as small as a young child, was floating up in the middle of the cabin. His eyes were closed, and he seemed unconscious. Rays of entrancing light were being emitted by his figure that continued to shed blinding fable fragments. These fragments went through the subway's windows and drifted off to the destination unknown. Kim Dak-ya's avatar next to Han Soo-young gasped out. His eyes were trembling as if he was shocked. Then, he began approaching the young Kim Dak-ya. The moment he said that, a powerful suction force began pulling him in. Some kind of power was summoning him back. The avatar's body began breaking down bit by bit. Those broken bits were then sucked into the main body. His gaze looking back met Han Soo-young's. She reached out unbeknownst even to herself. Grab him. However, her hand couldn't touch him. The rate of the avatar breaking down and getting sucked in grew faster. The bits of fragments from the avatar brushed past her hand. Some words were caught in Han Soo-young's fingers. "I'm sorry." Just what was he sorry about? Kim Dok-ya's avatar scattering away like an apparition emitted bright light as he got sucked into the main body. However, despite it absorbing all of the avatar's fables, Kim Dok-ya's body didn't grow back up again. No, the amount of fables flooding out from him increased instead. Kim Dok-ya. Han Soo-young instinctively realized it. They needed to stop that. Otherwise, they would lose him forever. Her muscles tightly wound up, released like a spring. And so, just as Han Soo-young tried to approach Kim Dok-ya floating in the air. Kwaya. Youc ant go fu rthr. Accompanied by a loud explosion noise, powerful gusts of wind suddenly blew in, and something exploded out from Kim Dok-ya's body. His fables were overflowing wildly. Sentences flooding out like black tides blanketed the entirety of the cabin and swallowed Han Soo-young up. "Everyone be careful." She was forced back mercilessly, along with sensations of her skin being swept away. Kim Dok-ya was getting further away. She urgently looked around, but there was not a thing she could grab onto. Even though she unleashed the status of a constellation and borrowed the powers of great fables, she had no method to defend against this surging torrent. Kim Dok-ya stow. Sentences escaping from Kim Dok-ya's body scratched past her entire figure. Sentences a man used to endure his life, the despair created by one person's life. The tidal waves of letters completely blanketing every direction resembled the darkest of the darkest night. The Kim Dok-ya she understood was merely just the tip of an iceberg. Han Soo-young was overwhelmed in an instant and was helplessly shoved back, unable to say anything. It was Yu Sang-ah who supported her back, though. "Get yourself together." Kim Dok-ya's figure could be spied among the gaps of the letters. Yi Jai-hai shouted out, "He's a kid. Why did Odyssey become like that?" "Hyung." Everyone gather around. To fight against the tidal wave, the companions hurtled together. Unfortunately, even that was not enough. They were kept pushed back again and again. At this rate, not only would they be forced outside the cabin, but get ejected from the train itself sooner rather than later. It was then someone spread open his entire figure and stood to block the exit. "Hueap, I shall support you all." It was Yi Hyun-seong. Accompanied by Kwadujuduk noise, he activated the steel transformation. His arms and legs assimilated with the metal of the exit and caught the companions like a net. With a pained face, Yi Hyun-seong watched Kim Dok-ya's fable brushing past his body. To Yi Hyun-seong, Kim Dok-ya was too difficult. The act of understanding someone started off with admitting that you didn't know anything about that person. Yi Hyun-seong bit down on his lip hard enough to draw blood and shouted out, "I can only hold on for a little while. Hurry." Gong Pildu quickly summoned his armed fortress and supported Yi Hyun-seong from behind. He then shouted out, "If I help, we can endure for a bit longer, so hurry up and rescue that fool." The companions looked at each other. "Hold each other's hands, everyone." Jiang Huiwan grabbed onto Yi Hyun-seong with one hand and extended the other. "Unleash your fables all at once." That outstretched hand was held by Yi Clhwa, then Shin Yu-seung and Yi Gil-yong held on to her other hand. The hands of two children were then connected to Yi Jai-hai. Persephone, as well as Yi Soo-jeong, followed them right after. "Kim Dok-ya, wake up." Jang Ha-yong grabbed Yi Soo-jeong's hand and cried out, while Yu Sang-ah caught her extended hand next. Soo-young SSI. The last person to grab the outstretched hand was Han Soo-young. "I got you." Great Fable, one who rebels against fate, is continuing on with its storytelling. The great fable that connected the companions, as one began resisting against the vicious storm. Like a buoy in the stormy sea, Han Soo-young's body helplessly rocked from side to side. She could hold on only because of her companions behind her. The companions tightly held each other's hands within the crashing waves of the letters, as if they were trying to save a drowning man. Jiang Huiwen shouted towards Kim Dakya, ever so faintly visible to her. Dakya SSI, we're here, just hold on for a little bit longer. The companions holding onto each other's hands were like sturdy sentences connected as one. Han Suyong felt the warmth transmitted in her hand and gradually realized something. Words existed to describe the depths of the darkness, and to console such darkness, the thing called story was created. Kim Dakya. The tightly held hands, supported by the sentences shoring up other sentences. While entrusting herself to that hand, Han Suyong approached Kim Dakya one step at a time. Only his face could barely be seen as the rest was covered by the darkness of the letters. WHYOU are doing is meaning LS. The waves grew more and more vicious as the fourth wall voice resounded out. THRZONE Kim Dakya. Han Suyong knew the reason why that Kim Dakya was getting smaller. The younger face of him right now resembled the most ancient dream they saw some time ago. He'd lose the memories of the days he spent with his companions, and he'd even lose the memories of when he read The Ways of Survival. Then he'd become the purest child after returning to the universe's great cycle. Later on, he'd get rescued by the secretive plotter. If that was the case, what would happen to the Kim Dakya they remembered? We've managed to come this far, so this. Han Suyong reached out as pain of her hand, burning away, assaulted her. Kim Dakya was right before her eyes. The one and only reader who could understand this story. That Kim Dakya was right over there. There were less than 4 meters between them, yet to Han Suyong, this distance came across as an infinite margin that nothing could fill. As if an invisible wall was standing before her and Kim Dakya. You son of a bitch, you promised to read my novel, didn't you? She wanted to tell him that there was a world that didn't need his sacrifice to be saved. She thought that, if it was her, she should be able to do it. Because she was most proficient at lying than anyone alive, after all. What the hell is this ways of survival, anyway? I can easily create dozens, hundreds of worlds of illusions. Her shouting voice was gradually losing its strength. She had written so many sentences until now, yet she was still unable to save a single person. Within the world growing dizzier, Kim Dakya's figure was getting blurrier. What would it have been like if only she was just a little bit stronger? Maybe they didn't plan this out properly. Maybe she should have learned an even stronger attribute. Maybe she should have earned a much, much harsher fable. She shouldn't have abandoned Kim Dakya from the get-go. She should have cottoned onto Kim Dakya's plan sooner. No, maybe. She shouldn't have written The Ways of Survival in the first place. She shouldn't have become an author of such a story. An author? Han Suyong abruptly raised her head. Could she do it? It was uncertain. No, I can do it. Someone else was saying that in her stead. Memories of the 1863rd turn became a fable and began to violently writhe around. Han Suyong looked down at her own fingertips. Her fingers, scorched black like charcoal. She was not a protagonist but a writer. Han Suyong's hand, looking as if gripping a pen, began to slowly move. They created trajectories in the air. These trajectories went to become letters, and those letters soon became words. Your attribute is being pushed to its absolute limit. Warning, you do not have the authority of overwrite. Han Suyong vomited out a mouthful of blood, but didn't stop. From the very onset, an author really had only one way to reach her reader. Han Suyong imagined, just like how the other her did once upon a time. With the most vigorous, carefully worded sentences, she began drawing out a man's hands, his arms, and his legs. An individual created solely for the sake of one reader. An entity tougher in body and nobler in heart than any creature in this world. The man who managed to bring down all the stars in the skies to end his truly lengthy regression turns, and eventually, even succeeding in destroying the system of the world. Sujajajachu. Every character was, as a matter of fact, an incarnation of the author. However, that didn't mean the incarnation was the author itself. The characters that left her hands wouldn't listen to her, after all. And that was why Han Soo-young was trying to get the help from the individual she had created. Constellation, architect of the false last act, is unleashing all of her fables. Your new stigma is blooming. That one term that could fill up that empty margin. Han Soo-young shouted out as if she was screaming, "Yu Young-hyuk." And right next second, the letters before her eyes split apart. The breaking the sky swordsmanship. Secret technique, in our mystery transmission. Split the dark ocean. A single sword split apart the pitch-black night ocean. The fighting spirit of a transcender bursting out from the entirety of his body illuminated the darkness of the letters. Stigma character summon is activating. The individual she had written, but she didn't know of. Character Yu Young-hyuk is answering the call. Hold on tight. A man descended with the rays of light. Yu Young-hyuk's powerful hand grabbed hers. Han Soo-young endured against her eyes tearing up and shouted back at him. You hold on tight instead. From Yi Hyun-seong to Yu Young-hyuk, the companion's fable began to glow brightly. To get this far, they had lost many things. Young-hyuk SSI, we leave it in your hands. Master, hurry. However, it wasn't as if they had been losing things only. Yu Young-hyuk extended his hand out. The distance of just one person, the distance that couldn't have been bridged without the presence of just one person, was finally being closed in. Yu Young-hyuk's hand reached out while breaking past the letters. The sentences protecting Kim Dokya fell away one by one. The hand that experienced thousands of regressions tightly grabbed hold onto Kim Dokya's collars, as if to yank out the oldest memories from within. It's time to go back, Kim Dokya. Right next second, as if the lights were turned off, the whole world was suddenly plunged in darkness. Epilogue 4, The Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint 4, Fin. Chapter 540, Epilogue 4, The Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint 5. Within the space of darkness, as if the curtains had come down on the last act, Han Soo-young opened her eyes within this darkness. The eye of truth expanded and began emitting faint rays of light, and gradually she could see her surroundings better. Just what happened? You have misaligned and broke the world line, deciding probability. Your actions have affected the most ancient dreams, black. The most ancient dreams, black square is changing. Then indecipherable messages floated up next. But none of that mattered. What's important was rescuing Kim Dokya. Han Soo-young focused her sight to the presence she picked up in front of her. When she did, something sooty, darkish could be spotted. Yu Young-hyuk, is that you? Yes. Han Soo-young felt around like a blind and approached him, only to freak out and shout loudly. Hey, you moron! What the hell are you doing choking a little kid? This is not a little kid, it's Kim Dokya. It's kid-ified Kim Dokya. She hurriedly snatched Kim Dokya away from him and brought her finger closer to the small nose. She felt a very faint, shallow breathing. But why was this? Something about his current state felt wrong. Just what was up with this feeling that he might shatter into pieces at any second? What's wrong with him? His fable has been damaged too extensively. I've already fed him the life and death pill, but it's not working. They needed YCLHWA. However, none of the presences of their companions could be felt nearby. It seemed that only Yu Young-hyuk, Kim Dokya, and herself were trapped within this separate space. With hostile eyes, Han Soo-young glared at her surroundings. There was only one culprit capable of doing something like this. The fourth wall, stop this and let us leave. Along with Tsu-chuchet noise, a faint, blurry silhouette appeared within the darkness. A boy dakibai wearing a fedora was standing there. Its face was filled with indescribable sadness and purity. Han Soo-young studied the fourth wall for a little while before asking it, "Is that your real appearance?" Tihadas Rajht. It no longer resembled the figure she had spied within her memories. Not a sign of a middle-aged dakibai could be seen on that face. The fourth wall addressed her. Aria Lelongt Mihas Pa Estbai. Han Soo-young thought about something. Maybe the fourth wall was in the same boat as Kim Dakya. It too could have forgotten everything and gradually turned into a child while enduring the untold length of time. While fixing Kim Dakya's clothing, Han Soo-young asked, "You were protecting Kim Dakya because of my order, weren't you?" ITHINKIWS. You gave Kim Dakya the ways of survival text files, right? You kept helping him out afterwards, too. The fourth wall didn't reply. No, it just stared at Kim Dakya with vague eyes of someone digging through very old memories. Han Soo-young's voice now took on the subtle hint of anger. "But why did you let Kim Dakya end up in this state? Say something. What were you even thinking to let? You don't know what the reader really wants." The fourth wall no longer stammered its words. "You all truly do not know anything. We'll be taking Kim Dakya with us. We can't sit back and watch this guy live his life as the most ancient dream." At her attitude of willing to start a fight, the fourth wall's brows quivered. But rather than Han Soo-young clenching her fist in nervousness, Yoo Young-hyuk stepped forward instead. "If we take him with us, will the position of the most ancient dream be left vacant?" Han Soo-young's shoulders flinched. It wasn't as if she had never thought about that problem. The problem of, after Kim Dakya is rescued, who will take over the position of the most ancient dream? This world was maintained solely because the most ancient dream dreamed. In a universe operated only through someone's sacrifice, someone had to become the existence who dreamed. Yoo Young-hyuk opened his mouth. "I shall take over." Hey, what bullshit are you spewing now? I'm trying to say that I will become the new, most ancient dream. How can you pull that off when you don't even have an iota of imagination? No, let me do it. I can do it so much better than this Kim Dakya here. That's why. Han Soo-young yapped on and on, even though she didn't really understand what her mouth was saying. She simply blurted out only with the aim of stopping this crazy idiot. And fortunately enough, the fourth wall was Yoo Young-hyuk's ally in this case, either. Puppet of the most ancient dream, you can't become the dream, because you don't love this story. In that case, I must. It's the same story for you, Han Soo-young. Then who's going to take over this guy's role? I'm telling you this right now, but we're definitely taking him with us, you hear? Even if it's you, you can't stop us. The fourth wall stared at Han Soo-young and Yoo Young-hyuk for a little while. "Take him? What's that?" "You can just take him. Even if you take away that Kim Dakya, this universe won't be destroyed anymore." As she didn't expect to hear such a reply, Han Soo-young could only blink her eyes like an idiot. She glanced to her side, and even Yoo Young-hyuk was making a similar face. Just what was the Dakibai saying here? She had never thought of such an ending. Was it really okay to welcome a conclusion of this nature? No, that simply wasn't possible. This Starstream was never considerate towards any of them before, not even once. Han Soo-young's face gradually hardened, and she asked back, "Why won't the universe be destroyed even after we take him away? The Kim Dakya, you know, has scattered to the rest of the universe already." What was that? She dazedly stared at Kim Dakya currently embraced in her arms, at his frail figure, small enough for only one of her arms to wrap around. It felt like a hammer had struck her on the back of her head. It couldn't be. The reason why Kim Dakya ended up in this state was, Just what the hell did you do?" "This wasn't my doing. It's what he himself wanted. After all, he knew your group would do something like this." A subtle chill began running down her skin. In order to save this world, someone must become the most ancient dream. If Kim Dakya was saved, then someone else must replace him. Would someone like Kim Dakya really not know that? You all have done something terribly stupid. The conclusion the reader wanted was the only conclusion. Why did you try to change it? The expression of the fourth wall, staring at her, gave her the creeps. A negative emotion that was neither hatred or resentment, not even sadness, was now directed in her and Yoo Young-hyuk's direction. You shouldn't have been greedy. No, YOUSHL DVBN Con T and TYTH 49% Kim Dakya. Along with the voice gradually breaking apart, the surrounding time and space began to distort. The id you re ally thigh and kyo grow up w as species. The id yo you hun ease tly, bel eve th at a proper conclusion wo old wide for you lot wh, and you distr, oid the laws of th is universe. Even before she could reply, the surroundings grew brighter. You lot havimi ss eat up or conclusion, and youll no w become emi rabli. When Han Soo-young opened her eyes again, she found herself standing in Seoul, Gwanghwamun of the 1865th regression turn, the very location where her group readied for the scenario. Snow was drifting down on this landmark that had seen the last conclusion of the scenarios. She quietly looked up at the snowflakes falling one by one. She slowly lowered her gaze and saw the small Kim Dokya, still nestled within her embrace. His breathing remained rhythmic. Master! Yijai ran towards them from a distance. Even Yu Sangha and Jiang Huiwan urgently running next to her could be seen, too. The rest of the companions were safe. Soo-young SSI, what about Dokya SSI? Even before Han Soo-young could say something, Jang Ha-young quickly snatched away and hugged Kim Dokya. Kim Dokya, his hand it's as cold as ice. Does anyone have gloves? The companions quickly surrounded Kim Dokya. Each of them was drunk in their own emotions. Jiang Huiwan holding onto Kim Dokya's pale, smooth cheeks were crying, while Ye Hyun-seong and his bear-like bulk were cautiously wrapping Kim Dokya's naked feet. Even Yu Sangha couldn't hold back her tears this time. Both Shin Yu-seung and Ye Gil-yong seemed to be moments away from passing out, too. The figure of Gong Pil-do sitting on a nearby bench could be seen, busy puffing away at his cigarette, as if such a spectacle was too ridiculous to even participate. Is Dokya sleeping now? Yi Soo-jeong asked that, and Han Soo-young nodded as her reply. That small movement was all she could do after squeezing out every dollop of her remaining energy. Companions finally managed to rein in their emotions and began to talk in turns. The first one to step up while rolling up her sleeves was Jiang Huiwan. I'm really going to dangle him up this time. Right in front of the industrial complex, no less. I'm not joking here, so all of you, do not try to stop me. Even still, the current Dokya SSI is a child. By the way, will Ajasi remain in this state forever? Hyung, wake up please. You're pretending to be asleep because of how embarrassed you are, right? Did he get younger as a side effect of something? Yijai, hesitating ever so slightly, suddenly shouted out in a bright voice. Who cares if he got younger? We can just raise him, right? Does that mean I can go to the same school as Hyung? Hey, you think Ajasi really became a little kid like you? And so, for the next couple of minutes, they bickered and bantered like this. In the meantime, YCLHWA was checking out Kim Dokya's current condition throughout his body, but as she did, her expression was slowly hardening. When Dokya Ajasi wakes up, he's going to remember us, right? It won't be like he's lost most of his memories or anything. Han Soo-young couldn't say a single thing to such companions. She kept bobbing her lips up and down many times. It wasn't a certainty yet. They couldn't trust everything that stinking wall said. That's why they. You too, why have you been keeping quiet until now? Han Soo-young hurriedly avoided meeting the gaze after hearing Yu Sangha's question. Soo-young SSI. Soon afterwards, Yu Sangha's gaze shifted over to Yu Young-hyuk, and then she got to witness a shocking scene. Yu Young-hyuk SSI. Yu Young-hyuk's expression was frozen pale white, and as if he had lost a protective wall of his mind, he seemed to be muttering something to himself, too. Yu Sangha had seen such a sight before. Back in the 73rd Demon World, when Kim Dokya ceased to exist alongside the outer god. She quickly brushed past the companions and held Kim Dokya's wrist. It was so frail that it might break at any second. The pulse itself was faint, too. However, she wasn't a doctor, so this didn't tell her much. She asked CLHWA next. CLHWA SSI, the current Dokya SSI, what's Ro? His soul has been completely damaged. His soul was damaged. In that moment, A similar type of shadow was cast over the companions' complexions. However, that didn't last long. Jiang Huiyuan spoke up first. I'm sure there is a way, right? I mean, we cured something like that before. Indeed, they had experienced a similar event to this in the past. The damage to one's soul meant damage to one's fable, damage to one's theme. Yi Sujiong had survived such an illness before. Shin Yuseung hurriedly followed that up. There really is no problem, right? It's not the same as back then. We can get help from this world's ailing. And we also secured a lot of star fluid ahead of time too, didn't we? Shin Yuseung continued to speak. She brought up all the ways she could think of without rest, over and over again. And then, that's why. Tears formed on both of her eyes. Shin Yuseung continued to shake her head in denial, saying this couldn't be it. Yu Sangha cautiously wrapped her arm around the girl's shoulders and spoke. Please be honest with us, CLHWSSI. CLHWA dropped her head lower and placed her hand on Kim Dakya's chest. When she did, a small piece of fable fragment floated up from his frail-looking chest. That was the last remaining fable of Kim Dakya. Constellation, Demon King of Salvation, has reached his new black. His small fable glimmered like a very tiny phrase. Constellation, Demon King of Salvation's black is epilogue. And so they had reached the epilogue no one had written. Epilogue 4, The Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint 5 Fin.